Chapter 10:29. Chu Feng discovered an extremely terrifying problem. It was useless even if he hid in the stone jar. His memories were still deteriorating, and all types of memories were becoming blurry. This left him horrified. The reincarnation's influence was so great that even the ultimate gem jar couldn't block it. Something's wrong. Fortunately, he wasn't completely muddle-headed and had a guess. He didn't reincarnate in the true sense. He originally smuggled his body over, so there shouldn't be any confusion in the womb. There was something strange about this. Chu Feng thought of a possibility. The reincarnation substance had already taken effect on his body when he was in the final destination, accompanying him. That was why it wasn't that the stone jar couldn't isolate the final destination, but rather that it was useless even if he hid in the stone jar with that type of substance or energy on his body. In reality, even though the final destination was terrifying, it couldn't directly interfere with the world of the living. It was difficult to project natural laws over and couldn't enter the stone jar. I've been affected for a long time. When I was digging for the 33-layer heaven's grass and capturing the Sun Dragon River in the final destination, I was unknowingly attached to that special substance. Chu Feng sighed softly. The reincarnation's final destination was unfathomable. He was cautious and vigilant, but in the end, he still experienced the side effects. Fortunately, he only needed 3 years to eliminate this kind of influence, so it wasn't considered a disaster. So, when Chu Feng came out from the stone jar again, he was already 1,500,000 li away. He quickly climbed a mountain peak and surveyed the surroundings, actively searching for cities and other things. He didn't want to go to a sect that was too powerful. It would be easy to give himself away. At the very least, he had to exclude extreme, martial, Hunyi, and primordial from the sphere of influence. My head is a bit dizzy. I've really forgotten many things and can't remember many of them. I have to hurry and find a fairy sister to raise me. Even at this point, he still couldn't forget it. There's a beast trap here. It's so thick. Are we going to hunt a dragon? Chu Feng was speechless. When he saw the beast trap in the mountain forest, his eyes were a bit dazed. It was several zhang long and was hidden in the withered grass. What exactly was it going to deal with such a large beast trap? Soon after, he looked into the distance and saw smoke rising from kitchen chimneys dozens of miles away. Sure enough, he had arrived at a place with people. He had finally found an area with people. Who should pick me up? Chu Feng shook his head vigorously to keep himself awake. He must not forget everything. He had not been discovered yet. What if he was eaten by a ferocious beast? Someone is in that direction. He heard shouts. There were people fighting in the mountain ridge, and it was very intense. Regardless of whether there's a fairy sister or not, I have no choice. I feel like I'm about to completely fall into a trance. Chu Feng had no choice but to approach the mountain with the stone jar in his arms. At the same time, while he was still awake, he pondered what to do with the stone jar. Should he bury it in the mountain? Otherwise, if it fell into the hands of others, it would no longer be a secret. However, he was a little worried about burying them in the mountains. Can you put it into the millstone shrouded in gray mist in my body? Afterwards, Chu Feng did just that, and he actually succeeded successfully. He used the God King pills in his body to guide the stone jar into the gray mist, isolating it from the outside world. Now I can rest assured. But very soon, Chu Feng's little mouth formed an O shape. He saw a middle-aged man about 3 meters tall. His hands were like cattail leaf fans, and his fists were like small wash bowls. He was in the middle of a fierce battle. His opponent was actually a butterfly. This burly man was actually fighting a bloody battle with a beautiful butterfly. His whole body was covered in blood, and his injuries were not light. However, this butterfly was indeed not ordinary. It was more than 1 meter long, and its whole body was striped. It was colorful and very beautiful. It emitted a luster as if it was polished from colorful coral. Moreover, every time it flapped its wings, there would be electric arcs flying out like light blades. The burly man was electrocuted until he trembled. There were many wounds on his body, and he was dripping with blood. The burly man was a hunter and an expert from a nearby tribe. His cultivation was at the Golden Body realm, the the same realm as the butterfly, but he was at a great disadvantage. This was the flowing light butterfly. It could emit light blades and release lightning. It was known as the killer among evolvers of the same realm. In a battle of the same realm, few creatures were its match. This burly man could already be considered very strong to be able to fight to this stage. If the Golden Body realm was considered an expert in the Een realm universe, they would have long destroyed mountains and rivers. However, they didn't cause any commotion here. At most, they could only crack stones. That was because this was the Yang realm. The laws were complete, and the heaven and earth were extremely firm. Even Li Jiuxiao and Ji Kai-Xian, who were at the Divine King realm, would find it difficult to destroy mountains and rivers, let alone the Golden Body realm. Chu Feng looked up at the sky and sighed. It seemed that he couldn't wait for his fairy sister. In the end, he would meet a burly man with a full beard. He was a little skeptical. Could this kind of rough man feed him? Would he know how to take care of a baby? Can you survive yourself, let alone take care of me? Chu Feng was seriously doubtful. That butterfly was very strong. Its whole body was colorful, and every time it flapped its wings, there would be lightning and light blades. The burly man was exhausted and seriously injured. If this went on, he would die. At the same time, it was very agile and very fast. It was like a flash of light moving and shining. It's not easy to see a person. Is he going to be killed? Chu Feng frowned. He felt that this hunter wasn't a match for the flowing light butterfly and was going to die here. Roar. Suddenly, something strange happened. The burly man's fist glowed as he roared. He was like a ferocious tiger coming out of its cage. In the end, he really turned into a white tiger. What kind of secret technique is this? His flesh and bones are exploding. It's not an illusion. He really turned into a white tiger. Chu Feng was surprised. White tiger fist, both form and spirit appear. Kill! The burly man roared. Now, he was a white tiger. His roar shook the entire forest with a monstrous killing intent. The white tiger was the king of ferocious beasts and advocated killing. Now it was boundless. When it pounced, it turned into a beam of white light and suppressed the flowing light butterfly. No matter how the light blades flew over or how the lightning exploded, this brave white tiger couldn't move. Its big claws crushed the mountain rocks and dispersed the lightning. When it came into contact with the butterfly's wings, there was a clanging sound and sparks flew everywhere. In the end, this flowing light butterfly was smashed by the white tiger's claws and killed. To the nearby tribes, this flowing light butterfly was a threat, and it was eradicated today. After the burly man finished killing the fierce butterfly, he couldn't support himself either. He fell head first onto the ground and revealed his human body. He had bronze-colored skin, wounds all over his body, and his clothes were even more tattered. What is this? In the end, it wasn't him who picked me up, and it wasn't the fairy who adopted me. Instead, it was me who picked up a burly man. Chu Feng walked over. When he approached this place, he was really a little speechless. What was this called? He still wanted to find someone to take care of him, but in the end, it was the other way around. He looks very simple and honest. He shouldn't be a bad person, right? However, one may know a person's face, but not his heart. Take advantage of the fact that I'm not muddle-headed yet, and quickly examine him. Chu Feng's movements were very fast. He took out the stone jar once again and stored the burly man inside. He used his soul light to examine him. Fortunately, even though this person looked boorish and had a full beard on his face, his intrinsic qualities were very good. In the end, Chu Feng found a place to lie down. It was rather far away from this place, but it could also ensure that this burly man could hear him if he pretended to cry loudly. Fortunately, this burly man woke up after a short while. There's the sound of a baby crying. Strange. How can there be such a small child crying in the depths of the mountains? The burly man muttered. He stood up while grimacing in pain. He carried the flowing light butterfly's corpse and searched for the source of the sound. Chu Feng really wanted to say, "Hurry up and come over here. It's very embarrassing to cry like this. Okay?" Who knew that after the burly man came over and took a look at him, His expression immediately changed, and he turned around and ran. Why did this blockhead run away? Chu Feng was stunned. This was completely different from what he had imagined. Why didn't this burly man have the slightest bit of sympathy? Demonic fox, I know this is your transformation. Don't try to deceive me. I won't fall for it. The burly man shouted from afar. Chu Feng was immediately speechless. Who did he offend? How did he become a demonic fox? It seemed like there were all kinds of oddities in this mountain, and it was quite harmful to the nearby tribes. The burly man waited for a long time, but he didn't see the demonic fox act violently. He was a little doubtful. Could it really be a child? He came back again. If it really was a baby, then after he left like this, it would be equivalent to giving up a life. It was equivalent to watching someone die and not saving them. Slap! Chu Feng was still pretending to cry. As a result, his bare buttocks were slapped. His little buttocks immediately turned red. He was so angry that he almost jumped up and fought with the burly man. Mother of Astra's he actually gave him a slap. How preposterous! It shouldn't be a demonic fox. Otherwise, it would have jumped up and hurt people long ago. The burly man muttered to himself. Chu Feng hit someone. Who could he find a reason with? If it wasn't for the fact that he was in a hurry to be adopted, he wouldn't have swallowed this insult. Then he was directly picked up by the huge hand and put into an animal skin bag along with a flowing light butterfly. The burly man carried him on his back and left. Chu Feng was speechless. He felt that if he chose this person to adopt, he would probably suffer for the next 3 years. How could someone do things like this? He was really not particular at all. He was a baby, and he was directly stuffed into an animal skin bag with the prey. This was too unrestrained and rough. Chu Feng was worried. He felt that the next 3 years would be a piece of darkness in his life. Could this burly man feed him? He might choke to death by stuffing food into his mouth. He always felt that he didn't know how to take care of people at all. In a while, I will hand him over to the fairy in the temple. If he is placed beside me, he might accidentally be trampled to death, the burly man muttered to himself. Chapter 10:30. How touching. Is there really such a devastatingly beautiful fairy sister here? Then I can be at ease. Chu Feng muttered to himself. When passing through some dangerous mountain forest areas, vicious beasts howled. Several meter-long silver praying mantises circled above the mountain ridges. When they flapped their wings, clanging sounds could be heard. They brandished a pair of scythes and chopped down a 9-meter-long black vicious bird. Chu Feng felt dizzy as he looked through a crack in the beast's skin pouch. What kind of place was this? Even the insects were so savage. After discovering this mantis, even the robust man hid in the forest and took a detour, unwilling to provoke it. It was clear how savage it was. After passing through a rocky area, the mountain path became easier. The vegetation gradually became sparse, but they were all ancient trees. Each tree would require more than 10 people to wrap their arms around it. So much so that some of the thistles were a meter in diameter, and some of the vines were as thick as a water tank. They coiled around the mountain, their copper roots emitting a golden luster while their leaves were sparkling. Splash! On the roadside, fishes leapt out from the streams and springs. They were all a foot long and had a luster like coral. Their teeth were sharp, and they threw the small beasts passing by onto the riverside before dragging them into the water. Soon, the water was dyed red with blood. Chu Feng shivered. To a child like him, this mountain region was truly dangerous. Alho! A loud beast roar tore through the mountain range's sky. A scarlet mist of blood surged like a tidal wave in the depths of the mountain range, causing all the vicious beasts to tremble. The image of an ancient beast appeared. It was incomparably huge and as tall as the sky. Its eyes were like lightning as it appeared within the scarlet clouds and confronted another vicious beast. For a long time, the place was incomparably stifling, and the great wastelands were completely silent. Sigh, this place is becoming more and more dangerous. The vicious beasts in the mountains are getting stronger and stronger, and there are also strange beasts that have advanced. Sooner or later, there will be a battle between beast kings. The robust man sighed and increased his speed as he walked out of the mountain. After a long time, the depths of the mountain finally regained its peace. The strange beasts that were as tall as the sky disappeared, no longer confronting and roaring. Outside the mountain, the sound of hooves could be heard, accompanied by the aura of savage beasts. The group of people were all very valiant. Their upper bodies were bare, and their lower bodies were covered in beast skin clothes. Some of them carried metal spiked clubs, while others carried scarlet metal, forged machetes on their backs. They entered the mountains to hunt. They rode on a special kind of mount. It had the head of a golden wolf, the body of a bull, and the hooves of a horse. It was not very fast, but it was very stable and was good at running on mountain roads. Brother Ji Haishin, why did you return empty-handed? As one of the experts from the nearby tribes, you don't live up to your name. A middle-aged man with bronze skin and a mace in his hand reined in his mount, which had a wolf's head and a bull's body. The muscular man, Ji Haishin, did not have a good impression of him. I come from a small tribe. How can I compare to you? The skinny middle-aged man was an evolver at the Golden Body realm. His spiritual power was very strong. So he sensed something and said, there's a living creature in your beast skin pouch. What kind of precious little beast did you hunt? It's nothing. I just picked up a child. Ji Haishin answered truthfully. You picked up a child deep in the mountains. Don't tell me it's your own. Did you give birth to a child with a mountain elf or a great deity? You only brought it back today. The skinny middle-aged man's voice was very loud, and the corners of his mouth carried a mocking smile. There were scars on his face. Some kind of ferocious bird had clawed at him, leaving behind a few terrifying wounds. This kind of smile looked somewhat terrifying. The others were also laughing along with him. Thunder Flood Dragon, you've gone too far. Ji Haishin shouted. A vivid and lifelike white tiger appeared behind him. It was formed from energy and erupted with an astonishing, baleful aura. Immediately, sand and stones flew everywhere. I'm just making a reasonable guess. I remember that some of the surrounding tribes have done this before. In order to obtain a powerful bloodline, they would marry a spirit in the mountains. Who cares about other things? That's right, Ji Haishin, your tribe has not produced a genius for so many years. When the time comes, how will you explain it to the Lord Officiant at the tribal meeting? You won't really take the risk out of desperation and bring back a spirit's illegitimate child from the mountains, right? The lean, middle-aged Thunder Flood Dragon's words were filled with sarcasm and were not pleasant to listen to. Who said that the tribes of the desolate border were simple and honest. At the very least, Chu Feng found this middle-aged man very displeasing to the eye. His words were filled with sarcasm, and he continuously ridiculed him. Ji Haishin coldly said, Thunder Flood Dragon, stop mocking me. My tribe's youths are all as strong as little tigers. When the time comes to cultivate the white tiger true explanation, you'll be in for a treat. The Thunder Flood Dragon faintly smiled and said, Forget it. Your tribe's youths are far inferior. Woo. When the time comes, we might send an 8-year-old child. It's just one person. He can sweep away your group of white tiger youths. Haha, that would be interesting. The people beside him also began to laugh. Then, the Thunderflood Dragon jumped down from his mount and arrived in front of Ji Haishin with his wolf fawn club in hand. He stretched out a finger and pointed it at Ji Haishin's chest. A cold smile hung at the corner of his mouth as he said, Back then, your son was beaten to death and you were cut off from the line. Haven't you learned your lesson yet? If you challenge us again, your tribe's so-called group of talented little tigers will become crippled little tigers. You're courting death. Ji Haishin was enraged. This had touched upon the scar in his heart. The Thunder Flood Dragon retreated and said, Don't be in such a hurry to act. There will be plenty of opportunities to compare notes in the future. It's not good to have a conflict between tribes now. He sneered threateningly and his eyes were cold. The group of people behind him also began to clamor. Each and every one of them was arrogant and unruly as they clamored and threatened Ji Haishin. Chu Feng couldn't bear to watch any longer. The so-called simple tribes were simply nonsense. No matter where it was, there would always be strife, and there would always be vile people. It had nothing to do with the tribe or the region. In any case, Ji Haishin had adopted him. Chu Feng really wanted to get rid of this thunder flood dragon in his place. Without a doubt, there seemed to be some kind of rule between the tribes. They couldn't casually start disputes or provoke bloodshed. Ji Haishan had some misgivings in his heart, but in the end he endured. Since he's not your monster son, come, let us see what this child looks like. When the time comes, he can testify for you that you didn't adopt a demon. The Thunder Flood Dragon put on a fake smile as he mocked Ji Haishan. That's right, if he's not a monster, then let us have a look. The Thunder Flood Dragon's clansmen also clamored and clamored. Ji Haishan was filled with anger. Ever since the Thunder Clan became stronger than the Ji Clan, each and every one of them became incomparably domineering and provoked him everywhere. He couldn't bear it any longer. However, in the end, he still opened the beast skin pouch. Otherwise, if this group of people went back and talked nonsense, it might bring trouble to the Ji Clan. Oh, it's a white and chubby boy. It's just that he's a bit small. He doesn't look like the babies of our tribes in the desolate lands. Don't tell me he really is a little monster. The Thunder Flood Dragon maliciously smiled and quickly reached out to grab Chu Feng. He lifted him up and carefully observed him. What are you doing? Ji Haishan berated. His killing intent boiled, and he couldn't bear it any longer. The white tiger, true form, roared behind him, ready to fight to the death at any moment. Don't be agitated. I'm just looking. I feel that he doesn't belong to our desolate lands. To be abandoned by his parents at such a young age, he looks ominous. Ji Haishan, I don't want to criticize you, but hurry up and burn him to death. There was a scar on the Thunder Flood Dragon's face. It was left by a vicious bird. Although he was smiling, it made him look somewhat sinister. F***CK. Chu Feng was furious. This was unbearable. This lean middle-aged man was too hateful. Just because he was hostile towards Ji Haishan, he even wanted to burn him to death? He decisively attacked. Then, between his legs, there was a hissing sound as he poured water. F***CK. The Thunder Flood Dragon almost fainted from anger. His eyes were wide open. This little bastard dared to pour water on him? Right now, he was using his palm leaf-sized hands to lift up this boy. He raised his head to look at this stupid boy, but in the end, he was drenched head-on. His face was drenched and his eyes were blurred. In particular, when he roared in anger, his mouth was drenched. That feeling, there is no need to even mention it. The Thunder Flood Dragon was enraged. He exerted his strength, wanting to pinch this child to death. He was furious. Ji Haishan had been on guard the entire time. As soon as he saw Chu Feng pour water, he made his move. Before the Thunder Flood Dragon could kill him, he snatched Chu Feng back and quickly retreated. How infuriating! Kill this little bastard for me. The Thunder Flood Dragon spat and retched as he rubbed his eyes. He flew into a rage and roared again and again. Wantonly provoking tribal wars, the Thunder Clan will be punished. Ji Haishan stood in the distance, coldly looking at them. Little bastard, I wish I could pinch you to death. The Thunder Flood Dragon's chest heaved up and down. He fiercely glared at Ji Haishan and Chu Feng. In the end, he restrained himself and didn't attack. Even so, he was still enraged. Chu Feng had a pure and sweet smile on his face. He stretched out his little hand and smiled at the Thunder Flood Dragon. He let out a sounds and had a very happy appearance. Little bastard, in a few years, I will have that group of Thunder Clan children kill you. At the very least, I will make you a cripple. The Thunder Flood Dragon turned around and left with his people. Ji Haishan laughed. He looked at Chu Feng and said, Not bad. You're very much to my liking. Whether you did it unintentionally or if you were born with a bit of evil nature, I want to recognize you as my adopted son. The smile on Chu Feng's little face suddenly froze. He had such a strong and robust adopted father. In fact, it wasn't anything special. Not long after, Ji Haishan brought Chu Feng back to the tribe. This was a tribe with a population of 500 to 600. It could only be considered a small tribe. The terrain here was relatively flat, but there were many rocks in the surroundings. They were piled up together, forming a rough stone wall that defended against the attacks of wild beasts and protected the people inside. Some children appeared and jumped down from the several zhang high rock walls like frisky monkeys. There were also some children who sat on 3-meter-long purple gold dragonflies that circled in the air. Uncle Haishan, you and the other hunting teams have been in the mountains for 2 days. A large group of people came to our tribe. A child shouted. What happened? Ji Haishan was startled and quickly asked. He was very strong and had always been hunting alone. He didn't follow the other teams. I heard that they might be descendants of heavenly nobles. It was a group of great figures that came here to relax. They were hunting here and passed by our tribe. A child informed. After entering the tribe, the first thing Ji Haishan did was look at a crystal mirror. He used his energy and immediately, many figures were projected out. Their auras were extraordinary and their mounts were auspicious beasts with a bloodline of Qilin. Chu Feng was surprised. This tribe wasn't simple. The crystal mirror could actually reflect the past. Soon, the expression on his little face froze. He saw a woman. She was cold and otherworldly, beautiful and noble. He knew her and was very familiar with her. She had become a descendant of heavenly nobles so quickly. Chapter 1031. Don't worry, they're just passing by. Heavenly countries, flourishing heavenly descendants look down on our barren, desolate border, so it won't affect us. Ji Haishan released a sigh of relief after seeing the scene on the crystal mirror. He was also afraid that those Dao children and fairies with great backgrounds would target the tribe, but now he was at ease. The clan elders all said the same thing. These people are just passing by, hunting and relaxing in the great wastelands. There's no need to panic. A youth replied. On the side, Chu Feng was stupefied. How could he not recognize this person? It was actually Linoy. He couldn't be more familiar with her. He already knew that Linoy had long entered the Yang realm. She was the first evolver to cross the boundary and appear in the Yang realm's great wastelands. After more than a year, she actually became a descendant of the heavens and obtained such a high status. She looked cold, elegant, and pampered, becoming more and more aloof. She wore a snow-white long dress that flowed with hazy splendor. It actually reflected order symbols. According to what Ji Haishan said to himself, this was a dress woven from the silk of a demonic silkworm at the divine king level. Chu Feng watched calmly and thought for a bit. In the end, he sighed. Even though he met an old friend in this region, he didn't want to look for her right now. The sparkling bird beak-bone hairpin on Linoy's head looked even more outstanding. It was bright red and sparkling, and divine chains of order hung down, binding a few strands of her hair. This made Chu Feng quite shocked. Soon after, he thought of the great figures he saw in the reincarnation palace. Among them, there was a woman with peerless style and unfathomable cultivation. Her appearance was exactly the same as Linoy's. This made him sink into contemplation. And, suddenly, Chu Feng was shocked. Even though his memories were still blurry and many things were gradually forgotten, the speed had slowed down. He was a bit suspicious. The so-called infantile obsession might not have affected him that much. He might not have completely forgotten everything. Uncle Haishan, who is this little fella? Isn't he too small? Asked a child who looked like a calf. He was quite sturdy. He jumped up and down on the boulder wall. This is your little brother. You pick him up. In the future, none of you are allowed to bully him. Ji Haishan warned these brats not to be muddle-headed. Chu Feng was speechless. This child, who was as strong as a calf, was only 4 years old, but he could already run like the wind. He was even taller than a 7 or 8-year-old child. In reality, he quickly learned that most of Desolate Border's children were like this, especially this tribe's children. They were all like little tigers, their bodies robust and tall. When Chu Feng saw all the adults in the tribe, he was thoroughly convinced. Most of them, be it men or women, were over 2 meters tall, and many of the men were almost 10 meters tall. Even the smiling elders with crooked bodies were the same. There weren't many kids who were as delicate as Chu Feng. When Chu Feng saw the water tank in the tribe, he felt that he could swim if he jumped in. As soon as he entered the tribe, he learned a lot. Cultivation. The most important thing is cultivation. Chu Feng quickly stabilized and began his cultivation plan. Everything in the stone jar had been destroyed, Even the diamond band melted. However, the 3 seeds were hidden in the earth dug out from the ultimate land of reincarnation, not damaged in the slightest. These 3 seeds gave him great confidence. He was looking forward to them greatly. There were stone houses in the tribe, all of them made from grayish-brown rocks. They were tall and sturdy. There were also houses made from giant wood, ventilated and bright. They were like mushroom bunches. The streets were paved with bluestone. It was unknown just how many years it had been stepped on for. There were some places that had caved in from the friction. It was close to noon. Smoke rose in spirals from the tribe's chimneys. It was time to eat. Ji Haishin said, "Even though I recognize you as my adopted son, there is a sick woman at home, so there is no way to raise you. It's better if I send you to the temple on the mountain." He handed the flowing light butterfly to the clansmen, triggering cries of alarm. This demonic butterfly was extremely powerful. It brought disaster to the nearby tribes, always giving many hunters a headache. Quite a few people died, yet they couldn't do anything about it. Who would have thought that it would be eliminated by Ji Haishin this time? This flowing light butterfly was very valuable. If a pair of sparkling and translucent wings were sold, it would be enough to exchange for a dozen beast carts worth of food. Ji Haishin carried Chu Feng and walked towards the back of the tribe. After exiting the stone wall, there was a mountain a few hundred meters away. It wasn't very tall and was adjacent to the stronghold. A clan elder shouted from behind, "Haishin, don't be in a hurry to enter the mountain this time. Stay in the stronghold for 2 days. I think even though those descendants of heavenly descent have left with a large group of people, they will come back from the great wilderness and pass by here sooner or later. At that time, you will entertain them and see if you want to follow them to the outside world to broaden your horizons." Ji Haishin paused and said, "I won't go to the outside world, but I will stay in the tribe for a few more days." "Those people will come again?" Chu Feng's heart was slightly moved. He actually had the chance to see an old friend so soon. Should he meet him or not? Even though this so-called back mountain wasn't tall, the spiritual chi was quite abundant and rich. If it was in the Een Realm universe, this place could be considered a holy land among holy lands. There were some old trees growing on the short mountain that was only 300 meters tall. They bore strange fruits that were glistening yellow and sparkling red, and the fragrance of the fruits assailed the nostrils. There was a clear spring flowing and dense spiritual mist rising from it. "Fairy, I've sent you a disciple." Ji Haishin had just started to climb the mountain when he shouted loudly. Chu Feng pondered. Could it be that this was a hermit expert who had always wanted to take in a disciple? He was very expectant. Generally speaking, a true fairy who lived in seclusion in the desolate border was most likely someone with a story. Was it a celestial venerable's last disciple who left the great wilderness in defeat? Or was it an almighty's illegitimate daughter who entered the mortal world to experience it? For a moment, Chu Feng's imagination ran wild. "Fairy, are you there?" Ji Haishin shouted again. Whoosh! A person appeared halfway up the mountain. The sleeves of her clothes fluttered in the wind as she welcomed Ji Haishin, who was climbing the mountain. Chu Feng's eyes flashed. This was that otherworldly fairy? He was spellbound, his eyes staring straight. F***, this thick-browed and big-eyed fairy with a square face, wide nose and wide ears, and half a foot-long chest hair. This simply made his mind go wild. For a moment, Chu Feng's entire body felt unwell. He really wanted to turn around and run. Rather than being raised by this kind of fairy, he might as well follow Ji Haishin. He sighed. He should have expected this long ago. For a burly man like Ji Haishin, who was over 3 meters tall, his arms were thicker than a normal person's thighs, and his fists were as big as basins. He was like a big hairless bear. So what kind of person was this fairy in his eyes? She was probably like this right now. "Big brother Haishin." That thick-browed fairy shouted in a low and muffled voice. Chu Feng was scared. He really wanted to run away immediately. "Dong Qing, is your family's fairy here?" Ji Haishin asked. "She's still here, but she's about to leave," Dong Qing replied. When he heard this kind of conversation, Chu Feng didn't know why, but he felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Wasn't this the main character? He was really a little nervous just now. After all, he was going to be raised by her for several years. He carefully sized this Dongqing up. Although her attire was a little unconventional and a little gender-neutral, and even more feminine, she should be a man no matter how he looked at her. Ji Haishan said, "Dongqing, don't be anxious. Your strange illness can be cured. Every time I enter the mountains, I'm looking for it. Recently, I found some clues and feel that there should be a jade snow divine orchid in the depths of the desolate land. It can remove your curse and restore your female body." Chu Feng was startled. She really was a woman? When he heard these words, he no longer had any thoughts of escaping. He felt that this girl named Dongqing was a little pitiful. She was cursed and had her original appearance covered. "Let nature take its course," Dongqing replied very calmly. There was an ancient well on a mountaintop and a dozen or so old trees. Two of them looked like the Bodhi tree and the spiritual Tao tree. Their branches were old and strong, like old dragons lying in hibernation. A divine temple towered there. It was very ancient and filled with the vicissitudes of time. It was like an ancient ruin that had existed forever with the world. The courtyard walls were dilapidated and hadn't been repaired. Only the temple hall had been repaired. The tiles were dusky, but after being illuminated by the sunlight, there was a faint golden luster flowing about. It looked very extraordinary. An old woman with a head full of silver hair was smiling benevolently in front of the temple. Was this that otherworldly fairy? Chu Feng's heart had already calmed down. "Granny," Ji Haishan shouted respectfully. "Yes, my family's young miss is in the temple." She was just about to go out. This granny was very amiable. Her smile made one's heart feel at ease. The divine temple was extremely ancient. Chu Feng immediately felt that this place wasn't simple at all. It was as if it had been left behind from prehistoric times. In this dilapidated and ancient temple hall, there was a statue. It was weather-beaten and its face had become indistinct. However, the overall outline was still there. It was a woman who was quietly sitting cross-legged. She gave off a special feeling as if she had existed since ancient times and was overlooking the entire desolate land from this corner of the wilderness. Chu Feng's heart trembled. No matter how he looked at it, he felt his heart throbbing. This place seemed to have transcended the mortal world and was like a pole of the world of the living. There was another woman in the dilapidated temple hall. Her light yellow dress dragged on the ground. She was worthy of the name fairy. At the very least, her figure was relatively perfect. She was tall and slender with astonishing curves. Her temperament was cold and elegant, but her figure was incomparably moving. Unfortunately, he couldn't see her true appearance. Her face was covered by a veil, only revealing a pair of eyes. They were full of spiritual qi. When her eyelashes fluttered, her entire person was extremely ethereal and had an indescribable charm. It was as if a fairy from the 9 heavens had descended into the world. And when she was silent, her eyes were deep and her entire person became indistinct. It was as if they were separated by a world. In her eyes, there were scenes of stars withering away. Great waves rose in Chu Feng's heart. Why was this woman so similar to the ancient statue in the divine temple? Especially after she sat cross-legged, she was simply identical. What kind of place was this? Soon after, he had a somewhat peculiar feeling. He sensed an indescribable aura from this woman's body. It made his heart throb, and then he was greatly shaken. Great waves struck the heavens in Chu Feng's heart. Even though his little face was very pure and naive, his heart was greatly shaken. That kind of feeling was too astonishing. That was because he sensed the aura of reincarnation. As a reincarnator who had smuggled his physical body into that ultimate land, he was even more sensitive than others. From his soul light to his body, they were all from his previous life. They carried an indelible imprint over. Now, Chu Feng sensed that this woman also had a faint aura of reincarnation overflowing from her soul light. Perhaps she herself didn't even know that reincarnation matter was radiating from her body in an extremely thin manner. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't be able to sense it, but Chu Feng was different. He might be the only creature that had escaped the ultimate land of reincarnation with his physical body. Chu Feng was shaken. What kind of place was this exactly? A dilapidated divine temple existed eternally with the world, and a mysterious fairy actually carried the aura of reincarnation. It was too terrifying. Would the other party be able to sense him and see through his roots? Chapter 1032. A reincarnator, someone who had passed through the ultimate land, had actually appeared in front of him. This was too shocking. Chu Feng's heart was like raging waves beating against the shore. Rocks flew through the air, and for a moment, his soul froze. It was truly terrifying. He had just arrived in the world of the living, and he had already encountered someone of the same species. However, as a child, he couldn't show any abnormalities. His little face was very pure, and his gaze was filled with curiosity as he looked left and right. Whoosh! Chu Feng floated up. In a split second, he flew up from the one zhang tall Ji Haishan's hand and quickly arrived in front of this woman with astonishing elegance. He was overwhelmed with shock. Had he been discovered? He was a reincarnator, and moreover, his physical body had reincarnated. He couldn't see the light at all and couldn't be discovered. Sister. He had an adorably stupid appearance. After shouting this word, the wisp of his origin consciousness hid into the gray mist millstone to avoid being discovered. Chu Feng waited nervously. He had always felt that as a physical body cultivator, he might be a bit different. Other people might not necessarily be able to detect him. His physical body had gone through the baptism of the ultimate land of reincarnation and bore a special imprint. After going through terrifying tempering, perhaps he was the only one who could sense the faintest radioactive reincarnation matter. Otherwise, if all the reincarnators in the world could sense each other, wouldn't it be a mess? There were no such records in the history of evolution, and neither Heavenly Venerable Stone Fox nor his master had mentioned such a thing. Next, Chu Feng wanted to curse. This woman, who was like a fairy from the nine heavens, was even more unrestrained than Ji Haishan. She casually swung him about. In the end, she even lifted him up by his ankles and swung him back and forth like a pendulum. Do you think this young master is a cloth doll? He really wanted to reward her with a soak in the immortal spring. Chu Feng was furious. Your foundation isn't bad. Under the snow-white veil, the woman's lustrous red lips parted slightly as she gave this evaluation. Chu Feng was like a bystander watching everything that was happening. The gray mist had concealed his true spirit, and it was indeed somewhat mysterious. However, he didn't dare to watch anymore. His main consciousness quickly sank into the two millstones and completely cut off his connection with the outside world. Ji Haishan was surprised and said, "To be praised by the fairy, this child must be extraordinary." He knew that the fairy in the divine temple had never praised another child before. This was the first time. At this moment, the woman stretched out her slender and jade white finger and placed it between Chu Feng's brows. She carefully sensed it, and as her eyes opened and closed, a ray of light shot out like lightning and emanated deep divine radiance. Thick soul light, not bad. She nodded. After that, her fingers brushed over every part of Chu Feng's body, inspecting every part of his body, from his flesh to his internal organs to his bone marrow. Ji Haishan opened his mouth wide, and his face was full of smiles. He looked like a big, hairless bear. Then, he stood up and bade farewell. Before he left, he did not forget to give Chu Feng's little but a slap, and said, "Godson, learn the immortal arts well here. In the future, you will have a meteoric rise and move unhindered in this vast wasteland. You can pick all the treasures of heaven and earth as you please, and you can do whatever you want in the wilderness." Chu Feng was only left with the instincts of a baby. He hid his main consciousness. After being slapped, he kicked his legs and scratched his little hands. "Dong Qing, go boil some water and steam him for a while," the fairy said. When Chu Feng cautiously and carefully injected a wisp of his main consciousness into his flesh, he was immediately scared. What was going on? That elder sister with the heart-protecting hair that was half a foot long was putting him into a steamer basket. Bang! He directly kicked over, wanting to flip him over. Had he encountered a demon? She actually wanted to steam him alive? Don't mess around. I'm helping you to temper your muscles and bones. Little fellow, don't be dishonest. Other people can't even obtain this kind of good fortune, even if they wanted to. Dongqing spoke in a low and muffled voice. He stuffed him into the steamer basket, but he did not close the lid. Immediately, the fragrance of medicine assailed his nostrils. All kinds of white mist rose and steamed Chu Feng's body. Chu Feng cried out loudly. He tried his best to maintain the instincts of a normal child as he tossed and turned inside. He rolled and kicked around in disarray, wanting to struggle free. This was not something an ordinary child could endure. Even if he did not use the Dao fruit from his previous life, he still found it a little hard to endure. His entire body was bright red, and if he closed the lid of the steamer basket, he would be cooked very quickly. He had never heard of such an evolution before. Chu Feng's resistance became more and more intense. He was a bit worried. He was so young and carelessly steamed like this. What if his muscles and bones were injured? He carefully thought back. Empyrean Stone Fox's master's personal letter regarding the most powerful path didn't mention this type of steaming method. He became more and more worried. Don't move. This is for your own good. Dongqing did his best to reveal a gentle smile, but in the end, he opened his bloody mouth and spoke in a rough voice. He seemed quite fierce, and suddenly, when Chu Feng was in unbearable pain and his skin was scalded red and swollen, the stinging heat turned into a warm stream that entered his body. In addition, it was accompanied by a rich medicinal fragrance. A few black ores and other things underneath the steamer basket were decomposed, displaying their effects. Strand after strand of black energy rose and entered Chu Feng's pores. Expose your head outside, and then close the lid tightly. Extinguish the flames, the silver-haired granny said benevolently. This time, Chu Feng was truly steamed. His entire body was steaming hot, and black mist curled about. Apart from his head that was exposed through a special hole, his entire body was stuffed inside. He could only endure it. In the end, he had to cry against his conscience and cooperate. Otherwise, he wouldn't be like a normal child if he was too steady. He was being steamed, and he still had to cry out loud. Was there even a place for him to reason? Chu Feng was resentful. However, when everything was over, he calmed down again. His heart was greatly moved. This was a method not even recorded in the personal letter of the most powerful, and it was quite effective for him. He could feel that he had absorbed some kind of rare substance, and his body had obtained benefits. It's not bad. Carry it out every 2 or 3 days in the future. In addition, give him a beating every day to refine his body. The fairy ordered and prepared to leave the mountain. The silver-haired granny followed. Before she left, she told Dongqing that she could enter the mountains to obtain black tiger milk to feed this child. Okay. Not long after, Dongqing carried Chu Feng into the tribe and had someone look after him. She then disappeared into the depths of the mountains. 2 hours later, Chu Feng was carried away again and returned to the short mountain. He saw Dongqing holding a spatial jade bottle, and inside it was a black and sparkling liquid. Black tiger milk can strengthen your muscles and bones and make your blood and qi abundant. In the future, you have to eat this kind of nourishing food every day. I hope you won't disappoint the young miss. While Dongqing was saying these words, she had already filled a bowl with sparkling black liquid and began to pour it into Chu Feng's mouth. Puffed. Chu Feng spurted out a mouthful. This fishy smell was too strong. He really couldn't stand it. How could he drink this kind of milk after living 2 lives? You're not allowed to waste it. 1 mouthful of this kind of black tiger milk is worth tens of thousands of gold outside. Drink it all, Dongqing said gently. Unfortunately, the sound that came out was muffled. She opened her bloody mouth and was quite rough as she poured the milk into his mouth. Then, she sealed his mouth and patted his back. Gulp. This directly caused Chu Feng to gulp it down. His mouth was full of the fishy and milk taste. He really couldn't stand it. He really wanted to shout, "I want to walk the strongest path and not drink black tiger milk." He was violently struggling. However, his resistance was useless. His head was forcefully pressed down, and he directly drank the bowl of black tiger milk. Not a single drop was wasted. In the future, 3 meals a day, have a bowl of milk for each meal. Don't struggle. How many people want to eat this kind of thing but can't? This is taking advantage of the fact that you're still young and haven't matured. It's to help you supplement your innate origin. You have to know that if you fall behind innately, you'll need to spend a lot of time and effort in the future to make up for it. Taking a small step forward now is equivalent to surpassing others by a large margin on the road of competition in the future. Dong Qing was preaching there. He didn't care if Chu Feng could understand or not. This thing could supplement innate origin. Did he really think it was dragon milk? Chu Feng didn't believe it. Our lineage combines all kinds of minerals, plants, and animals' spiritual essences. After mixing them, it can supplement innate origin. You should be glad that the young mistook you in. Dong Qing said to himself. Chu Feng's heart stirred. Next, he felt something. His body that had been fumigated by minerals had absorbed some indescribable substance. Now that he was nourished by the black tiger milk, there was actually a warm current spreading throughout his body. This was cultivation. It had already begun. His heart couldn't calm down. Could it be that innate origin could really be supplemented? This was extremely frightening. In this world, there are some ancient orthodoxies that are very particular. They attempt to communicate with innate origin and have ultimate methods that specialize in nurturing infants. However, what they consume are the treasures of heaven and earth. They need to place newborn infants in geomantic burial caves, earth-shaking immortal caves, and the eyes of the source of good fortune. We are different. We've opened another path. When he heard this secret, Chu Feng's heart sank. Even the personal letter written by Celestial Venerable Stone Fox's master regarding the path to the strongest didn't mention the innate scriptures for the infant stage. It could be seen from this that the Yang realm was vast and that there were many capable people, each with their own unique aspects. He still had a long road to walk. If he still thought that he could rise to power by relying on the strongest personal letter, then he was wrong. After a living creature is born, it's very difficult to develop innate attributes. We're basically mending the heavens. We're not weaker than the ultimate methods of those ancient evolutionary sections. It all depends on how far you can go. Afterwards, Chu Feng was still quite cooperative. He steamed the food and drank the medicinal paste when she told him to. As for the black tiger milk, he pinched his nose and accepted it. He closed his eyes and poured it into his mouth. Of course, what made him very unhappy was that he had to be beaten every day. This was what that fairy had warned him to do. She told Dong Qing to refine his flesh, blood, muscles, and bones. He really wanted to say that he was still so young, yet he had to be beaten. Was there still any justice in this world? During these few days, Chu Feng often stared at the mutant fruits on the mountain. His eyes emitted green light, and there were several times when he couldn't help but want to run over and nibble on a few of them. He wanted to evolve and rise earlier. However, Dong Qing was very strict with him, so he never had the chance to go over and touch them. I don't know if you'll be able to satisfy the young miss after you've been nurtured to a certain level. Then, you can go contend for hegemony with the true freaks of this desolate land. Dong Qing was lost in thought. She was fully aware of how terrifying some hidden families were. Their innate bloodlines were powerful to the point of leaving others in despair, and their nurturing was even more terrifying. They were meticulous down to the finest details. "I'm the strongest." Chu Feng stuttered as he shouted. He already understood that even in this barren, desolate border, there were still some children like him who he could talk to. As such, he no longer deliberately hid his abilities. Dong Qing shook her head. The more she understood, the more cautious she became. She didn't pay Chu Feng any attention. She pondered over some things and continued to talk. Chapter 1033. Chu Feng had a peculiar feeling in his heart when he heard this. He wished he could immediately rise up and witness just how vast and boundless this resplendent young realm was. It was said that even the celestial venerables couldn't explore its end. He wanted to travel throughout the wilderness and meet the experts of every race to witness the true glory. However, he trembled when he heard the latter part, and his soul light tensed up. Miss Dongqing actually mentioned reincarnation hunters. What kind of situation was this? Could it be that she had sensed something and knew his roots? What foragers and reincarnation hunters? He stuttered as he spoke innocently, but in reality, he really wanted to know in his heart. Dongqing surveyed the burning clouds in the distance and said, "You're so young. You won't understand even if I tell you." This was mentioned by the young lady. That level is already incomprehensible. Under the blood-colored setting sun, the entire barren mountain range was bright red and bathed in the sunset glow. Vicious beasts roared in the distant mountain range, shaking the forest until leaves rustled and fell. There were strange birds that soared into the sky and were dyed in a layer of bloody light by the sunset glow, looking even more ruthless. Understood, understood. Chu Feng shouted there in a childish voice and looked anxiously. He really wanted to know the secrets of that level. Miss Dongqing opened her bloody mouth and laughed, saying, "You're so small. How are you compared to the mountains and rivers? You're as insignificant as a speck of dust. Let alone you. Even the strongest powerhouses can't endure that unknown dense fog. It's just like this vast land has no end. Even almighty beings can't explore its borders. The Yang realm is hiding too many terrifying secrets, let alone something that involves reincarnation and other deeper level matters. We're separated by 33 heavens from that domain. We don't dare to think too much." Chu Feng was helpless even if he was anxious. He couldn't argue with her on just grounds, right? Wouldn't this expose himself? He could already tell that Dongqing was only speaking casually and didn't notice or realize that he was a reincarnator. Then he was pulled up by Dongqing and given a beating. It was so painful that he grimaced in pain. He really wanted to resist. Was there such a cultivation? He seriously suspected that the young lady who was like the nine heavens fairy found him unpleasing to the eye and intentionally arranged this. If she wanted to loosen up his muscles and bones, she could totally massage him. "Ha, this child is disobedient again. Come, Dongqing, I'll help you beat him up." Ji Haishan arrived just in time to see Chu Feng being beaten up. Chu Feng was so angry that his nose was crooked. Not only did this 3-meter-tall man not save him from his predicament, he even joined in the fray and actually hit him when he was down. How could there be such a godfather? I'm helping him comb his tendons, lengthen his periosteum, and nurse his body, Dongqing solemnly replied. Ji Haishan said casually, "That's easy. Let the little tigers in the tribe help. We'll just do it together." Dongqing nodded his head and said, "That makes sense. Our bloodline's evolutionary method pays particular attention to rising up amidst the crowd of monstrous geniuses. Rather than saying that outsiders are helping him improve the circulation of his blood, it would be better to say that he is participating in battles from a young age, exercising his muscles and bones, and nurturing a kind of wild battle instinct." To hell with the battle. Chu Feng cursed in his heart. He was just getting beaten up? Okay. Moreover, he was so small. What could he use to fight? He would only be beaten up. Let's go. Ji Haishan did not say another word and carried Chu Feng away. He returned to the nearby tribe and shouted at the group of children, "Come, let's all beat him up together. Just don't deal a fatal blow. Don't deal a dirty blow." "Uncle Haishan, didn't you say you wouldn't let us bully this little brother?" a child asked as he jumped down from the stone wall that was several meters tall. "I take back my original words." Ji Haishan waved his hand. Chu Feng's little face immediately turned green. This group of brats were each wilder than the last. They were like a group of small, vicious beasts. If they attacked him, would he be able to endure it? He reincarnated just to get beaten up? He was a dignified, divine, king-level evolver. This is for your own good. Some ancient races will directly throw their children into the dragon nest when they nurture their strongest descendants. They will fight with the young dragons hatched from the heavenly dragon egg, bathing in dragon blood and slowly growing up. There are also evolutionary sects that search the depths of the wasteland and capture young golden crows. Moreover, there are more than one. They will lock them up together with the children that the clan thinks highly of. They won't be given food and let them fight. Only those that survive will be focused on nurturing. Also, Dong Qing's explanation caused Chu Feng to be flabbergasted. At the same time, the group of children were also shocked, and their hearts palpitated. They were already wild enough, but in the end, in the resplendent divine city of the civilized land, those super powerful races with deep foundations were even more astonishing. They could actually treat their descendants so harshly and cruelly. For the rise of our G clan, to nurture the strongest genius. Fight! The group of children pounced over and helped Chu Feng to loosen his muscles and bones. They decisively attacked. Chu Feng crawled on the ground. His speed was very fast. He wanted to escape without a trace. Ji Haishan nodded repeatedly as he watched. As expected, you can force out your potential. You crawl much faster. However, Chu Feng couldn't voice out his bitterness. He clearly didn't know how to run and could only escape like this. However, this was too embarrassing. Do you guys still have humanity? Chu Feng really wanted to shout. He was very thick-skinned and thought that he was only a few months old. He wasn't even 1 year old, yet he was already surrounded and beaten up like this. This was too miserable. Chu Feng always felt that after he reincarnated this time, all sorts of things were wrong. First, he encountered an almighty who was on the verge of death. Then he barged into his dreamland. Then, he encountered a reincarnator and was beaten up here. There was no one else like this. He believed that the other reincarnators probably wouldn't be so unlucky. In the process of Chu Feng being steamed, in the time when he pinched his nose and drank black tiger milk, in the days when he was surrounded and beaten up by a group of children, he knew how to run. In the time of 2 months, he could already run like the wind with a whoosh. Just his new and tender body in this life could support him to do this. The effect of this kind of training was really shocking. During this period of time, news came from the mountains. In the depths of the primitive mountain range, there was a nest of dragons. Those descendants of nobility entered the mountains to hunt dragons. They wanted to obtain dragon eggs and hatch them into young dragons. They wanted to raise them together with the children of the clan to fight and kill. The nearby tribes were all shocked. Chu Feng was also speechless for a long time. What Dong Qing said wasn't false. There really were such powerful aristocratic families and evolutionary sections. He truly witnessed that those people had come for the sake of hunting dragons. Although they hadn't succeeded yet, they were probably about to succeed. We want to be young dragon hunters, a child shouted loudly. I want to be a brave warrior that hunts the Kuan Pong. Another child cried out strangely. After that, they began to chase after Chu Feng again. Now, beating up the youngest child had already become an inseparable part of their daily lives. Chu Feng was anxious and couldn't bear it anymore. In the end, he shouted, "There's no challenge in fighting with them at all. I want to go to the dragon nest and fight with the young heavenly dragon. Send me there." Unfortunately, it was too unconvincing. He still hadn't fully developed and had just learned how to run. In the end, he shouted, "There's no challenge in fighting with them at all. I want to go to the dragon nest and fight with the young heavenly dragon. Send me there." Unfortunately, it was too unconvincing. The Yang realm was vast and boundless, and each powerful evolutionary sex style was too intrepid. Was he lucky or unlucky to have encountered this kind of thing? Chu Feng was immediately speechless when he heard this. The Yang realm was vast and boundless, and the style of each powerful evolutionary sect was too intrepid. Was he lucky or unlucky to have encountered this kind of thing? Dong Qing added. In addition, if those so-called heavenly descendants can't take down the dragon nest, it's not impossible to throw you in later. Big sister, don't be so cruel. Can you wait until I'm 2 years old? Chu Feng was so excited that even his speech became fluent and he no longer stuttered. Dong Qing had a wide nose and face. He said in a rough voice, "Last time, Granny came back and said that if we can't find a suitable location, we can also consider the vicious ant nest on the other side of the earth and send you in. That's too cruel. How many do I have to fight alone? What if I get eaten? Chu Feng cried out. He felt that was too cruel and too irresponsible. In the following days, his eyes were constantly emitting green light as he stared at the mutant fruits near the tribe. There really were quite a lot of them, and he wanted to evolve as soon as possible. However, Dongqing was like guarding against a thief and kept him under tight control, warning him that it wasn't time yet. Ji Haishan waved at Chu Feng and said, "You still don't have a name, kid." Godfather racked his brains and thought for more than 2 months before coming up with a good name. "What's your name?" A group of children surrounded him. Even his 7 or 8 clan elders were all smiling. They stooped over and hid their hands in the sleeves of their beast robes. "It's not just me." The clan elders also helped to analyze it. The 3-meter-tall Ji Haishan was embarrassed for once. In the end, he said with incomparable solemnity, "It's called Ji Shukong." Chapter 1034. This name is really good. Even though Chu Feng's voice was childish, he still put on a resolute posture. He patted his small chest and asked a group of wild kids if this name matched his temperament. "The name Uncle Haishan and the elders gave me is naturally good. It's like a thunderclap or a great golden bell. It's so loud that even the deaf can hear it." A kid called Ji, who squinted his eyes into 2 slits as he flattered Chu Feng with all his might. "Then I don't want it." Chu Feng was serious, and his words became more and more fluent. Then he said, "After hearing you say this, my heart is greatly moved. The word void is vigorous and heavy. It's like it's going to crush the mountains and rivers of the ages. I'm shocked, but I always feel that it doesn't match my temperament. Forget it. I'll just call myself Heavenly Devil G. Little bastard, I'll beat you to death. How can my G family produce a devil?" Ji Haishan was about to cut his little butt, and he was going to cut it ruthlessly. Chu Feng rolled his eyes. Mother of Asterisker, he would get beaten if he called himself a heavenly devil. If they knew he was called Great Devil Chu by everyone in the universe in his previous life, wouldn't they go crazy? He turned around and ran. He crawled behind Miss Dongqing. Her shoulders were big and her waist was round. She was simply a living shield. "Brother Haishan, don't be angry," Dongqing advised. She was tempering Chu Feng's muscles and bones, so she didn't want him to be beaten up. "What I said is my true feeling. Although my heart resonates with the word void, I feel uneasy." "I can't be called by this name," shouted Chu Feng. This wasn't a lie. When this name was given to him, he actually felt his heart palpitate. He didn't want to be called void, even if he was beaten to death. "Your heavenly devil name won't do. Do you have anything else? What else do you want to be called?" At this time, an elder spoke. There were only a few big yellow teeth left in his mouth. The rest had all fallen off. Everyone in the Ji family, including the children, objected to Chu Feng's name containing a devil. This couldn't be passed. Chu Feng blinked his big eyes and said with a profound expression, "It's so lonely being invincible. How about I call myself GMO? I'm magnanimous and deep, and it indicates my future." "Pa!" Ji Haishan gave him a slap on his little butt and said, "You're just a little fart. You're still drinking milk, yet you dare to pretend to be profound. Why don't you call yourself Lonely Snow? If you hit me again, I'll fight it out with you." Chu Feng felt extremely wronged. He had reincarnated and started all over again, so there was no place for him to reason with. "Child, think about it again. Are there any other names?" A clan elder was all smiles. "Ji Wudi." Chu Feng raised his head and put his hands behind his back, looking very confident. "Wait." At this moment, Ji Haishan saw the smiles on the clan elders' faces. He also came to a realization and said, "This kid was still very simple-minded when we first picked him up. Why is he so talkative recently? And the more he talks, the smoother he gets?" Chu Feng felt guilty, but he pretended to be arrogant. He stuck out his chest and said, "I'm a genius." Dongqing opened his mouth and said, "That's nothing." Some of those clans that have existed for a long time have children who can speak a few days after birth, can run like the wind in less than 10 days, and can already recite poems and paint when they're not even 1 year old. Chu Feng was speechless. What kind of monsters were these? Dong Qing continued. What's more, some of the infants locked up in the immortal caves of evolutionary sex can speak the moment they're born, and they can fight together with young true dragons when they're only a few months old. Chu Feng was terrified. Was this true? He seriously doubted it. He was a reincarnator, so why did he feel like he had no advantage at all? There were already such monsters among the children born normally in the Yang realm. They must have all become spirits. So much so that he seriously doubted that the typical example was a reincarnator, right? He pondered inwardly. In the future, he would ask around and see which clan had produced such a heaven-bestowed genius. He would find an opportunity to kidnap them all. You guys are so high profile, so you must have squeezed out all of your value. He inwardly pondered. Could it be that an ancient almighty had successfully reincarnated? A clan elder from the Ji clan was experienced and knowledgeable. He spoke like this, but he was doubtful in his heart. Dong Qing shook his head and said, No, we verified that they're indeed children born normally. That possibility has been eliminated. Their true innate talents are terrifying. Moreover, these kinds of children were also recorded in the history books. Those who didn't encounter any accidents would all become almighty in the end. They were still alive today and were overlooking the great earth. Are there such monsters in the present age? A clan elder asked. This was also something that Chu Feng knew. He pricked up his ears and listened attentively. Yes, there are at least a few. Dong Qing sighed. He deeply felt the powerlessness of that kind of disparity. He was helpless against those little monsters. If there were no accidents, then they would be almighty in the future. The terrifying giants of the world were still in their infancy. Chu Feng sighed ruefully. What kind of world was this? The infants in the Yang realm with extraordinary innate talents were really a bit excessive. They were too abnormal and made people feel that this was very unreal. I want to evolve. I want to eat fruit. Chu Feng pointed at an old tree not far away. It was rooted right in the tribe, and glistening yellow mutant fruits hung from it. A rich fruit fragrance was currently wafting in the air. No, not only was Dong Qing against it, even Ji Haishan and the group of clan elders didn't agree. Even a group of wild brats shook their heads at him. Why? Chu Feng didn't understand. Even his eyelashes were blinking. He had an innocent and unaffected appearance, but this was also the true doubt in his heart. You're still young, so there are some things you don't understand. Dong Qing dodged the question again. However, when he saw that Chu Feng was dissatisfied, he added, Generally speaking, those under the age of 16, their qi and blood haven't solidified, and their corporeal bodies aren't strong enough, can't use catalysts and other things to promote their own evolution. When Chu Feng heard these words, he was immediately dumbfounded. There was even such a thing. He thought of the records in the strongest personal letter. It mentioned the various ways to tread on the path of the strongest, and it also mentioned that one had to adjust the body. It was best to be at the peak of one's strength. Only then would it be convenient to tread on the path of the strongest. After thinking about it carefully, this was also the meaning, but he just brushed it off. This is a matter of common sense. All the clans on the earth know that one must wait until the body has grown to a certain stage before using pollen and mutant fruits to enhance one's physique and promote one's own evolution. Ji Haishan glared at him with his bell-like eyes, telling him that he had to remember this well. Chu Feng's cheeks immediately streamed with tears. This was actually common sense, but how could he have known this earlier? Most of the outstanding talents of the various clans would only grow explosively after the age of 16, rapidly evolving and rising to prominence. Some freaks were limited by their age. Even if they hadn't used catalysts to evolve, their strength would still be considerable when they naturally grew to 16. At the same time, Chu Feng was also shocked to know that in this region, ordinary adult men could reach the minor demon realm. Awakening shackles minor demons. In other words, the majority of people could evolve to the third realm after adulthood. It was feasible on the whole and extremely common. Chu Feng was silent for a while and could only sigh inwardly. As expected of the Yang realm, this territory was relatively primitive, but it could still be like this. So what if it was a resplendent and flourishing land? Could it be that I can't evolve quickly before the age of 16? Asked Chu Feng. He felt that it was too much of a waste to squander a dozen years like this. Dong Qing said, "Unless you find some heaven-defying substances to nourish yourself, then there won't be a problem. But those substances are rare throughout the world and too difficult to find. Moreover, even if you find them, no one is willing to waste them like this. Instead, they use the heaven-defying substances of fortune in other places, such as prolonging the lives of dying and declining celestial venerables. Using them on a child was not worth it. Moreover, in the primordial Great Earth, rising to prominence a dozen years earlier and a dozen years later didn't affect much. The lifespan of most clans wasn't considered short, and they could afford to wait. It would be so wasteful and abandon rare substances that even celestial venerables needed for the sake of a child cultivating a dozen years earlier. In particular, no matter how much of a genius a child is, they shouldn't spoil things through excessive enthusiasm like this. Without corresponding tempering, using mutant fruits to evolve too early isn't necessarily a good thing. What could Chu Feng say when he heard this? He could only nod silently, but his mind was spinning with thoughts. He had reincarnated with his corporeal body and didn't need the tempering of the mortal world. He really needed to cultivate a dozen years earlier. In the following days, Chu Feng was very cooperative. He was steamed and beaten up by a group of people. He resisted them and tempered himself to lay down a solid foundation first. However, he was also studying the terrain of this desolate land in private. He wanted to find heavenly materials and earthly treasures, to search for substances of fortune in hopes of stepping onto the path of evolution sooner. During this period, the fairy who was like a fairy from the ninth heaven and that silver-haired granny also came back twice. They whispered to Dong Qing, causing Dong Qing to treat Chu Feng even more harshly. Chu Feng had once heard that fairy-like elder sister say that this lineage's breathing technique and inheritance were more suitable for women. Although she strictly guided Chu Feng, she wouldn't teach him the main scriptures of this lineage. In the future, he could be made a mountain protector and become the true inheritor's protector. Chu Feng was dumbfounded. He was only a spare tire, or perhaps he couldn't even be considered a spare tire. He could only be considered a future inheritor's follower, a loyal bodyguard. Sigh, for the sake of increasing my innate attributes, I'll stay here for the time being. Chu Feng sighed. After that, he became more casual. For example, if Dong Qing snored too much at night, he would run to the main hall to sleep. Occasionally, he would directly lie on the white jade bed of the mysterious lady of the ninth heaven. During this period, Chu Feng discovered to his surprise that the more he grew, the more blurred his memories became. That so-called fetal confusion was still in progress, but it would slow down after a period of time and then continue again. Could it be that he had to persist until the original 3-year fetal confusion? This is bad. I forgot many people and things. How many years will it take before I can remember them? Chu Feng was worried. It was very important not to let him forget the breathing technique. In the short term, it seemed impossible for Dong Qing to teach him the ultimate breathing technique of this lineage. That was because that young lady had warned him that he could only teach other breathing techniques. Therefore, robbery induction and the thunderous breathing technique were incomparably important to him. They couldn't be forgotten during these 3 years. God damn it, I wet the bed. Early in the morning, Chu Feng's face was red. As his memories gradually blurred, the fetal confusion worsened once again. He discovered that his physiological functions were approaching those of a child. He couldn't control his sleep in the middle of the night. Unconsciously, he drew a map on his bed. This was too shameful. He wanted to bang his head against the wall, especially since this wasn't his own room, but that fairy sister's white jade bed. He really felt guilty. Just as Chu Feng's little face was flushed with embarrassment, he suddenly raised his head and discovered that the fairy sister had actually returned. The silver-haired granny was also there. They were chatting and laughing as they entered the main hall. "What's this?" The yellow-clothed lady, who resembled the mysterious lady of the ninth heaven, came closer. Then she saw her own bed at a glance. "It's not me." Chu Feng was dizzy. The fetal confusion had been acting up continuously recently. Under this kind of embarrassing situation, some of his instinctive reactions were more like that of a child. For some reason, he shouted, "It's the fairy sister who wet the bed." Chapter 1035. It was just a voice, the clear and melodious child's voice carrying a hint of milk. In the early morning when the sun had just appeared, it transmitted especially far into the distance, tearing through the thin mountain mist, rippling outwards. The short mountain the divine temple was located on was adjacent to Ji Clan's tribe, the two almost touching. It was originally an extremely busy early morning, but now everyone stood in place, as if they couldn't budge an inch. Even the smoke from cooking and the golden multicolored light that scattered through the tribe seemed to have frozen, becoming a painting. What kind of situation was this? Ji Clan's several hundred people, regardless of whether it was the clan elders or the youngsters, were all a bit speechless. The woman who was like a goddess in their eyes, what her bed? The group of people were thrown into disarray. "This little bastard, I can't beat him to death." Ji Haishan broke this silence. Then he moved his thick legs, rushing towards the rear mountain, moreover roaring out, more and more naughty, daring to blaspheme a fairy at the age of a bean sprout. What will happen in the future? On the short mountain, inside the divine temple, the veil of the woman dressed in a goose yellow long dress clearly moved, her originally beautiful starry eyes releasing divine radiance in that instant. At the same time, her tall and slender body also froze for a moment just now. The originally pure and holy aura that was like the moonlight had once been stirred up by a hurricane in the blue sea. Her long dress that dragged on the ground fluttered, faintly revealing a pair of snow-white and perfectly straight long legs. This exceptionally beautiful woman was normally intelligent and aloof, always calm and composed. But today, she was stunned by this childish voice, as if she was struck by someone from the nine heavens above. In that instant, she fell into the roiling world of mortals. A light breeze blew past, raising a corner of her veil. One could see that her sparkling white cheeks were flushed red. Even her calm and collected self felt a bit embarrassed today. Normally, everyone who saw her would treat her with respect. Even if they met nobles, their actions would still be graceful, their words and actions appropriate, not overbearing. Today, a child actually shouted these types of words. Fortunately, this was desolate border, no one familiar here. On the side, the kind silver-haired granny's smile froze, feeling that this was inconceivable. It was so early in the morning, what was going on? She really wanted to throw this child off the mountain. The old woman said inwardly, if the young Miss enemies and other evolved beings of the same level found out, wouldn't her image be completely ruined? Dong Qing, hang him up. The woman spoke. Her mental state was very strong, and she instantly regained her composure. However, her words were rather straightforward. She wanted to take care of Chu Feng. In her eyes, the starry sky swirled. The sun and moon were born and destroyed. Together with her exceptional charm, it seemed a bit strange, giving off an unconventional feeling of transcendence. She was like an existence standing in the 33 heavens, looking down on the mortal world in silence. Dong Qing's face stiffened, and the corner of his mouth slightly twitched. This child had actually what a large patch of the young lady's white jade bed. In the end, he still dared to make a false accusation. Truly preposterous. Dong Qing wanted to violently beat up Chu Feng. At this moment, she revealed a smile that made Chu Feng's little face turn green, and he felt his hair stand on end. I'll let you run 39 meters ahead of me, Dong Qing said in a low, muffled voice as he opened his bloody mouth wide. Whoosh! Chu Feng ran. He was very decisive. He took big strides with his short legs and broke into a mad dash. Although he was still in a fetal trance state, he was already clear-headed after his quivering just now. He knew he had provoked trouble. This time, he wouldn't be beaten to death by that fairy, right? He indeed ran 39 meters, but in the last meter, a 40-meter-long snow-white broadsword slashed at him from behind, pressing down on his neck. At this moment, Chu Feng really wanted to go all out, but in the end, he became listless again. His body froze there, not daring to move. Dong Qing transformed and was dozens of meters tall. She had a green face and fierce fangs. Her purple hair danced wildly, and her blood energy rose sharply. It was unknown what race she was from, but she became more and more ferocious. She was so oppressive that the mountain forest in this area was about to explode. She held the 40-meter-long broadsword in her hand and pressed it against Chu Feng's little neck. This was entering a berserk state. From this, it could be seen how loyal and supportive she was of her young lady. She didn't hesitate to attack a child. "Little bastard, let's see if you still dare to." At this moment, Ji Haishan rushed up the mountain. He was originally shouting that he wanted to beat Chu Feng up, but now he swallowed back all his words. "Dong Qing, don't be agitated. Just do as the young lady says," the silver-haired granny said gently. Chu Feng was hung up miserably. His legs were tied up by the Tyrannosaurus tendon, and he was hung in front of the divine temple. Dong Qing personally took action, wanting to smack his buttocks into 8 pieces. "He's still young. Don't hit him." The fairy's gentle voice traveled over, and Chu Feng felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. No matter what, he was once the great demon Chu. Being smacked on the buttocks would become a black stain for the rest of his life. He felt that this fairy wasn't bad. She had a gentle personality, and people couldn't help but like her. However, in the next moment, his smile froze because the fairy hadn't finished speaking. "Hang him here for a day." She was rather calm and elegant like a fairy. Even her voice was so otherworldly, as if it came from the celestial domain. "You'd better hit me." Being hung upside down for a day was definitely more uncomfortable than being beaten. The fairy nodded and said, "Then I'll hang him after I'm done." "Stop, just hang him directly." Chu Feng looked as if he had nothing left to live for. He tilted his neck and looked at the divine temple from the corner of his eyes. This was definitely not a fairy, but a demoness. He really wanted to subdue the demon, but he was afraid of being subdued instead. An hour later, his little face couldn't hold it in anymore. He had nothing to say, because a group of wild brats from the tribe had run over. They were here to watch him embarrass himself, and they couldn't stop laughing. "Put me down. What's the big deal this time? I'll compensate you with a fire jade bed later. In the future, you won't have to pee wet anymore. With a flash of fire, you'll be dry in an instant. You're asking for a beating, aren't you?" Dong Qing's voice was coarse and rough. He glared with his large eyes and walked out of the divine temple. "Put me down." Even though today was an accident, when you look back in the future, you'll realize that this might be a miracle. No, an emperor's legacy. It's a trace left behind by an ultimate evolved being, and it's one of the few authentic works of the unparalleled me. You can't find a second bed like this in the entire world. Its value is inestimable, and it will have great historical and evolutionary significance. Chu Feng was chattering away. He didn't even blush when he said these words. His mouth couldn't stay still even after being hung up, and he was still talking. "Please remember today's great day. The unparalleled me has left behind a heavy stroke here, and it will be recorded in the annals of history. It is also from today onwards that I will step onto the ultimate path of evolution. I ask everyone to remember this day and move the heavens and the earth." His voice was childish, but he still had to be impassioned. He had a strong and passionate appearance, and it made the group of men, women, old, and young who rushed over from the tribe speechless. Dong Qing's face was twitching as he mocked. The future emperor's legacy is truly amazing. Even peeing the bed will become the beginning of a new era, and it will be recorded in the annals of history. It truly is glorious enough. The group of wild brats roared with laughter. I'll also quickly draw a map of this mountain when I get back, and it will complement the ultimate evolutionary traces. Ha! The group of half-grown brats winked and made fun of Chu Feng. Even Ji Haishan felt embarrassed for this child. When he first picked him up, he saw that his skin was soft and tender, but he never discovered that his skin was so thick. Recently, this child's words were becoming more and more slippery, and also more and more shameless. The fairy in the divine temple opened her mouth and said, "Sigh, then let's just keep this bed and suppress it in this desolate area. When it's unearthed in the future, it might really be an ultimate treasure." Following that, she smiled again. The perfect face under the veil was truly elegant and dazzling. She was devastatingly beautiful, and she said, "It's just that the legend of peeing the bed for the unparalleled ultimate physique isn't good to say. It's a typical dark history." This she-devil. Chu Feng curled his lips. Ji Haishan couldn't watch any longer and shouted, "Little brat, do you want to shock the past and dazzle the present by peeing the bed? Too shameless." The group of people burst into laughter. Chu Feng also blushed. He pondered carefully. If one day he really became an expert, not to mention an almighty being, even if he became a celestial venerable, this part of his history would also be a dark stain for life if it was dug up. However, he quickly calmed down again. He had done even more absurd things than this. When he was in the netherworld, he beat up divine sons and sold saintesses. His reputation as a human trafficker was known by everyone, so why would he care about this small matter before his eyes? He was rather conceited as he said calmly, "Don't worry. If one day I become an ultimate evolved physique, no matter how absurd my past is, it will be sanctified. I will be revered by the people of the world, and my radiance will illuminate the world." On this day, the emperor's dream is traceless, and the bed is wet, Chu Feng added. What emperor's dream is traceless? It's spring dream, isn't it? A youth said with a smile. Chu Feng nodded and said, "Smart. Later generations will naturally judge it this way." In the divine temple, the smile on the silver-haired granny's face immediately froze. This little brat really knew how to show off. He even dared to vaguely tease a fairy. Just how old was he? He was definitely a monster. Although Dongqing was also very angry, at the same time, he also realized that although this child deserved a beating, he did have some talent. He was worthy of being taught a good lesson and then nurtured. In the divine temple, the fairy's face was covered by a veil, so her expression couldn't be seen. In the end, she only calmly ordered to hang Chu Feng for a day and a night. Chu Feng was anxious and shouted, "Fairy, don't. Although you were in that dream, it might be a story that will be told in the future." "Dongqing, give him a beating," the fairy commanded. "No, from now on, I will maintain my silence and not say anything," Chu Feng shouted. Ji Haishan came over and pinched his little face, saying, "You little scoundrel, why didn't I see it earlier? You're really rebelling. If you dare to cause trouble again, I'll put righteousness before family first." Chu Feng did as he said. He maintained his silence there and only looked at him with slanted eyes. The following days, for Chu Feng, were both painful and happy. After being taught a lesson, his daily training became several times more painful. Dongqing gave him all kinds of care, often making him cry out loudly. It was so painful that he wanted to smash his head against a mountain. However, the effects of this training were clear. He was boiled in rare minerals, beaten with secret methods, and drank some kind of flying dragon's milk. His innate attributes were strengthened, and his growth was rapid. Make your preparations. When the time is ripe, the young miss is prepared to throw you into the dragon's nest in the depths of this desolate border. Dongqing informed. What was going on? Wasn't that dragon's nest favored by the nobles? Chu Feng asked in the middle of the attack. Dongqing nodded and said, "And once the dragon's nest is captured, they will put a few children with heaven-warping aptitudes inside. When the time comes, the young miss will find a chance to throw you in as well." You do as you see fit. Chu Feng cried out, "Don't tell me this is for revenge and to teach me a lesson? Didn't I just say something about having no traces in my spring dream? How am I supposed to survive against a super-evolved sect with my small arms and legs? You don't need to care about what happens outside the dragon's nest. It's fine as long as you can survive in the nest." Dongqing's words were concise. Chu Feng shivered and said, "You are saying that I have to fight a bloody battle with a few young dragons in the dragon's nest, and I might even have to fight a few little monsters? It's good that you know. This is too much bullying." Chu Feng cried out. Dongqing was expressionless and said, "The path of evolution is the survival of the fittest. This is your first test. Think of a way to survive." Chu Feng's little face was taut, and with a pair of small hands behind his back, he raised his chin and corrected, "No, what I mean is that for someone like me to enter the dragon's nest, it's too much bullying." Dongqing was speechless. After holding it in for a long time, she finally berated, "You talk too much." Chu Feng raised his head and sighed toward the sky. In reality, his heart was heavy. Right now, he was too young. If he fought against the dragon race and fought against a few little monsters, if he didn't use his past life's Tao fruit, the battle would most likely be extremely cruel. He might really be killed and be drenched in blood. After all, what he had to face was a small group of monsters. Dongqing warned, "Don't stir up any trouble in the near future." The troop attacking the dragon's nest might build a temporary imperial residence nearby and wait for reinforcements. We still have to wait for reinforcements. Chu Feng was shocked. The dragon's nest in the depths of the desolate border isn't as simple as just one or two mature dragons. The situation is grim and unexpected, so that group will most likely retreat first. When he heard these words, Chu Feng staggered. "What's wrong with you? You're so small, yet you're pretending to be deep in thought. You even have such a complicated expression on your face. Don't pretend." Dongqing wanted to beat him up. Chu Feng really wanted to say that this time, he really wasn't pretending, but rather that his mood was really complicated. His ex-girlfriend might appear here, and if he accidentally ran into her while strolling, it would be too awkward for him to meet her with how young he was right now. Chapter 1036. The raindrops fell on the leaves, making rustling sounds. The plants in the mountains became more and more verdant and sparkling. That group of people had really come. They were building a temporary residence not far from the G tribe and were making rapid progress. They were preparing to retreat from the dragon's nest in the depths of the desolate border. Chu Feng saw it clearly. These people were definitely going to set up a large-scale teleportation domain. They could easily teleport hundreds of millions of kilometers away. They were indeed asking for reinforcements. He felt a little uneasy. It seemed that he would have to meet Lin Naoi soon. He looked at his little rock and found that it was just a naked baby. Speechless, he asked the heavens. He was less than a year old now. He would be too ashamed to meet people under such circumstances. The raindrops were very fine, making the entire G clan's tribe wet. One rain drenching an entire season. How depressing. Chu Feng sighed. 550,000 kilometers away, the white-haired Li Jiuxiao, who was sitting cross-legged in a dry cave, sneezed violently. Cracks appeared on his body as his old injuries flared up. "Who is it? I've already sensed their malice towards me," he whispered. As a heaven-warping divine king, he hadn't recovered after so long. One could imagine how terrifying the tribulation he had experienced was. He had almost died during this trip to the desolate border. He had mistakenly barged into a late-stage, declining expert's dream and almost caused Li Jiuxiao to be killed. After recuperating for 2 to 3 months, he finally struggled back from the brink of death and gradually recovered his soul injuries. But every time he thought of the naked Li Zenzi, he would tremble with anger. "Idiot, don't let me see you again." The G tribe. "Let's go, little kid. I'll take you to see the most beautiful woman in the nearby tribe." Ji, who called Chu Feng over. The group of youths was about to set out. As for Chu Feng's name, the tribe hadn't decided yet. They called him Little Kid because he was the youngest among the children who could run. "Not interested, I'm not going." Chu Feng refused straightforwardly. Ji, who shook his head and said, "It's drizzling in the east, and the sunset is beautiful in the west. It's such a good time, and there are beauties here. The mood and style are both there. After drinking, we can go back under the moonlight. Wouldn't that be great?" Chu Feng pursed his lips and said, "There's a generation gap between us. You guys go ahead." "What do you mean?" This group of people who wanted to go out were mainly teenagers. They had a certain level of martial arts, and if they didn't travel far, they would be able to protect themselves. With his hands behind his back, Chu Feng raised his head and said, "In your eyes, the drizzle is hazy and the moonlight is bright. That is the wind, the flowers, the snow, and the moon. What I see, however, is the waxing and waning of the moon, the daily necessities of life, and whether or not I need to bring an umbrella. Oh my, you little brat, you're going to make us jealous to death. Acting like an old man, you even dare to lecture us." The group of youths was agitated beyond belief. "Little Bean, you're still young. Don't pretend to be old because your mouth is still full of the taste of milk." Chu Feng gazed into the distance and said, "Geniuses are always lonely. They go on their journey a period of time earlier. My current state of mind is similar to Sixth Uncle's." As he spoke, he greeted an old man who was passing by. This was a clan elder dressed in four-colored bee skin clothing. More than half of his teeth had fallen out. How can this child speak like that? "I, Sixth Uncle, am in my prime. I'm going to a meeting." Sixth Uncle's mouth was leaky, and he only had one front tooth left. "What meeting?" "I'll go with you," Chu Feng asked. He planned to go with this old man to broaden his horizons. Sixth Uncle bared his yellow front teeth and said, "What are you going to do?" "The moon is high above the willow tree, and people meet after dusk. What's the meaning of Sixth Uncle bringing a burden like you to an appointment?" Chu Feng was speechless. This old man's mentality was really young. No wonder he was dressed in gaudy bee skin clothing. It was made from white fox skin, black dragon skin, golden tiger skin, and red fire leopard skin. In particular, Chu Feng noticed that there were a number of colorful feathers on his head. His beard was already white, but he was still so coquettish. He was like an old peacock spreading its tail. Sixth Uncle walked a few steps before turning back and saying, "Little demon, don't be so old and clumsy. Go out and take a walk more often. Young people must live with vigor." Chu Feng rolled his eyes. Did this old fellow know how to speak? It was one thing to call him old and experienced, but why did it sound so different when it came out of his mouth? This fickle old man. Sixth Uncle added, "The heavenly pit I told you about last time is over there. A group of young brats like to meet there." Chu Feng was moved after hearing this, but at this time, the coquettish old man had already left the tribe. He activated the imperial wind technique, and immediately, his large sleeves fluttered in the wind. His figure disappeared in the blink of an eye. Recently, Chu Feng had been studying the geography of the nearby mountains and rivers. Although he couldn't use the divine arts of his previous life, his eyesight was still there. Especially since he was proficient in domain scriptures, he had always wanted to see through this desolate border. He instinctively felt that it wasn't simple. There was the dangerous black cloud forest, the resting place of a dying powerhouse, and the dragon's lair. It was very complicated. He wanted to ponder over it. Additionally, he was also studying the composition of the rare minerals cooked by the holly every day. He wanted to find them out in the mountains. That was why during this period, Chu Feng often hung out with a group of old men. It wasn't good to ask them openly, but he could ask them to talk about the legends of the mountains. From there, he could understand some special geography. The heavenly pit, the floating island, and the immortal fox cave were all important areas that were mentioned. They were strange and mysterious. Chu Feng was slightly absent-minded. He raised his chin and said to Ji, Hu, and the others, "We were young back then. Let's not waste the good times. Let's go." This group of people were all teenagers. They were wild and liked to laugh and laugh at the same time. "Little boy, today we are going to chase after your sister-in-law. You are so sour. Can you recite poetry or paint? Can you help us add more glory?" Chu Feng curled his lips and said, "Who will get the credit if we chase after her like this? Hey, you're just a little boy. You want to compete with us? Are you going to marry her and let her wash your diapers? The group of teenagers made fun of him. They were not easy to deal with. Chu Feng's face turned red. Now that everyone knew about the ultimate evolutionary trace, he became angry out of shame and said, "If you expose me again, I will definitely become your rival in love. I will compete with you to the end. Come on. When the time comes, do you need the girls in the tribe to hug you and have a romantic talk? What a strong smell of milk." Hee hee. The group of wild boys were very sarcastic. Chu Feng's young face twitched slightly. He looked at his own height and decisively took a fur vest from Jihu. He put on like an animal skin coat. He was no longer naked. He said, "Let's go. Don't wet me. That is made of ferret skin." Jiho was anxious. Chu Feng said, "Get lost. Summon the black dragon." Jiho shouted. Chu Feng was stunned. "Come out, my Zou beast. Let's go." Another wild boy shouted. Chu Feng finally understood. They were calling for mounts. Jiho summoned a black python. It flicked its scarlet tongue and quickly swam out of the tribe from the forest. There was also a white goat. It was quite big, bigger than a normal water buffalo. It shook its head and wagged its tail, bleeding as it ran forward. This was the so-called black dragon and Zou beast. Chu Feng was speechless. Although they were not eye-catching, they were still ferocious beasts. They were not weak. "Lightning beast, descend!" The fat boy in the tribe shouted with great vigor. Then, Chu Feng saw a big snail slowly crawling over. This was the so-called lightning beast. They were really boasting shamelessly. Some people summoned their mounts and prepared to go on their way. The fat boy shouted, "Kid, come and sit on my lightning beast. It's faster than them." Chu Feng was speechless. There had always been people saying that they were as slow as snails. He had never heard of snail as fast as lightning. How fast could it be? But in the end, out of curiosity, he still sat on the giant snail the size of a house. Needless to say, this snail ran really fast. The trees whizzed past, and the wind whistled as it passed through the forest. Chu Feng was dumbfounded. The black python behind was not slow either. When it swam, the thorny bushes in the mountains automatically parted to the sides. It could ride on the wind. A group of children cried out, riding on all kinds of mounts. There were scarlet old cranes flying in the sky, crocodiles with horns growing from the shore, and there were even people riding on roosters that were over 3 meters tall. They ran like the wind, traversing through the mountains and ridges. The heaven pit was not far. It was between a few tribes and was relatively safe. Otherwise, this group of youths would not be allowed to run around. As soon as they got closer, Chu Feng revealed a suspicious expression. It was such a big pit, dark and deep. It occupied a vast area and was over 10 miles long. Soon, he revealed a strange expression. This heaven pit was shaped like a gourd. It's also called the gourd pit. The fat boy told him that this place was very evil in the past, but now it was completely peaceful. On the contrary, it could even suppress evil. That was why some tribes were willing to move nearby. Chu Feng saw the abnormality. Although he could not use some of his methods, his experience and intuition were still there. He found some clues. This was a wondrous land. The more Chu Feng looked, the more suspicious he became. He sat on the big snail and used his weakened eyes of fire and gold. Golden patterns flashed in the depths of his eyes. His heart trembled. There was indeed something strange. This was a gourd land. It was shaped like a gourd and used the veins of the earth as its roots to nurture a blessed land. Gourds were blessings. This was a treasure land not only in name, but also in reality. Blessings would descend upon one's body if one were to make use of it. Chu Feng was excited. He was currently searching for a special terrain in consideration of his rapid growth and accumulating innate foundations. The evolver sex and the aristocratic families that had existed for hundreds of millions of years had too many resources at their disposal. What couldn't they bring out if they truly wanted to nurture the most powerful disciple? For instance, someone was attacking a dragon's lair at the moment. It would be terrifying if news of this got out. And all of this was just to put a few children into the dragon's lair to fight with the young dragons and grow up amidst bloodshed. During these days, Chu Feng was pondering how he could climb step by step and become the most powerful. Currently, Dongqing was cooking him with minerals every day to replenish his innate origin. Meanwhile, he was also thinking of a way to rely on his attainments and domains. If he could find an immortal cave or a strange ancestral land, he could nourish his body. Originally, it was recorded in the domain scriptures that one could use the mountains and rivers to achieve a super evolution. He was currently too young and couldn't be that intense, but he could find a land of fortune to replenish his innate abilities. Yeah, someone cut off the calabash's roots? Chu Feng's heart trembled. He felt incomparably regretful that this place had actually been destroyed. The calabash vine, which was also the connection between the earth veins and the sinkhole, had been cut off and withered prematurely. Was this intentional, or was it unintentional? It should have happened a long time ago. Chu Feng was regretful, but his eyes lit up after a while as he thought of a possibility. Under most circumstances, the severing of the roots meant that the calabash and vine were completely dead. However, there was also an extreme case where the calabash's roots might sprout once again and form another small calabash. If that was the case, the newly born blessed land would be filled with vigorous vitality. It would be the most suitable place to nurture humans if it entered the small calabash's stomach. I hope this is possible. Chu Feng decided that he would have a good search. However, there was a certain degree of difficulty. After the calabash vine was severed, the earth vein's roots would escape. They might still be nearby or hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. At this time, the drizzle had stopped. The setting sun was shining in the west, painting the horizon red. Additionally, there was a rainbow hanging horizontally in the sky. Not far away, a number of flaming oxen were grazing. They shook their fur and flickered with scarlet flames. The flames surged and evaporated the damp air nearby. Some youths were quietly approaching. They wanted to hunt and use them as dinner for this gathering. They were all from other tribes. Boom! A flaming ox stood up like a human with white smoke coming out of its nostrils. Raging flames surged around its body and burned the ground into magma. The group of youths scattered in confusion. Run, there's an ox king. However, the flaming ox didn't dare act viciously. There were several tribes nearby, and it wouldn't end well for him if he were to act viciously. What a pity. Otherwise, we could roast the ox leg for dinner. Hey, brothers from the Black Mysterious tribe, I heard a genius appeared in your tribe. He can fight intensely at the age of 5 and even dares to fight you. Is that true? Of course it's true. Our Black Mysterious tribe has always produced geniuses. A youth from the Thunder clan sneered and said, Our clan has a 3-year-old child who can shake you all. He is a heaven-warping talent and is the most powerful bloodline our tribe has had in the past several thousand years. At this time, the G-clan youth arrived near the natural crater. Brothers from the G-clan, you even brought a child. We were just talking about a young child with astonishing talent from a nearby tribe. Don't tell me you guys brought a child to show off. Someone spoke. This child isn't strong at all. He is white and tender. He doesn't look like our desolate border bloodline at all. Don't tell me he's the child of a spirit monster. The Thunder Clan youth said coldly. Chu Feng was disgusted. Back then, when Ji Haishan picked him up, he met the Thunder Clan's people. That Thunder Flood Dragon was extremely gloomy and tyrannical, not a good person. Now that he met the youth from that clan, he felt that he wasn't a good person either. Jiho shouted, Thunder Clan's people, don't randomly accuse us. This kind of thing can't be said carelessly. If he really was the descendant of a spirit monster in mountains, he would definitely be burned alive by the people of the various tribes. Woo, he looks a bit like the child Uncle Thunder Flood Dragon talked about. You guys actually dared to bring him out. Do you want us to directly crush him to death? The Thunder Clan youth said coldly. Shut up. This old one has lived for several thousand years, and now I've returned to my youth. Even an ignorant, idiot child dares to disrespect this old one. Chu Feng spoke. His small hands were behind his back as he arrogantly berated the Thunder Clan youth. His temperament and demeanor were truly outstanding. He had the bearing of a divine king from his previous life. The group of youths were all stunned. Chu Feng really didn't want to get entangled with a group of youths. He was pondering whether or not he could have them search for a blessed land together. Do you think I'm scared? Have you weaned on your mother's milk? The Thunder Clan youth wasn't easy to fool. Chu Feng said, "This old one will give you a chance. Kneel down and kowtow, or else your Thunder Clan will face a great calamity. From then on, your Thunder Clan will be erased from this territory." Jiho and the others were speechless. This little child really knew how to boast. He was much better than them at scolding people. Bringing him out could really scare people. "Really? You're an old senior?" At the edge of the heaven pit, a five-colored divine light flashed. A little girl that looked like she was carved out of jade appeared. She blinked her big eyes and looked at Chu Feng. Her clothes were too exquisite. She wore a small scarlet dress made from the silk of the divine level fire silkworm king. On her snow-white neck was a necklace made from a sparkling bird's beak. Chu Feng's pupils contracted. No matter how he looked at it, she looked a little like the descendant of the heavens that the people of the Ji clan talked about. Could it be that they were going to throw this little fellow into the dragon's nest to temper him? Chapter 10:37. This little girl was snow-white and very pretty. Her big eyes were sparkling, and she was quite intelligent. She was a little older than Chu Feng, but she shouldn't be more than 2 years old. Was this a demon? The other youths were all shocked. This little girl appeared too suddenly. Even they weren't sure if they could win against her. "Are you senior?" The little girl's voice was very crisp. There was a small dimple on her left cheek, and her smile was very sweet. Of course, it also had a little taste of milk. She wasn't much better than Chu Feng. "That's right. I've regained my youth. I'm 3,287 years old now." Chu Feng spoke nonsense with a deadpan expression. Jihu, Fatty Dunair, and the other youths from the Ji clan felt embarrassed for him. He was still wetting the bed a while ago, and now he had the nerve to brag like this? The little girl sighed. "How pitiful. Your clan is already old at 3,000 years old. You need great medicine to regain your youth. Your clan's lifespan is too short." Chu Feng? Question mark. He was bragging, but in the end he was being pitted. Was she mocking him or ridiculing him? He couldn't help but become serious and observe this little girl. Before this, he was a little absent-minded. He was always paying attention to the movements in the surroundings, suspecting that Linoy was nearby. She was a descendant of nobility, a disciple from a super aristocratic family. She might even be a little girl from an evolutionary sect that existed forever. Her soul light was very strong. The more Chu Feng looked at her, the more he felt she wasn't simple. He could almost be sure that she was one of the descendants to be put into the dragon's nest to fight a few young dragons. She was truly extraordinary. "Oh, I had an accident when I was crossing the tribulation. A bolt of heavenly lightning ended my Tao body. I had no choice but to abandon my Tao fruit and rely on medicinal herbs to regain my youth." Chu Feng stroked his chin as if he wanted to stroke his beard. The group of youths saw him make this subconscious movement. Some of them were really stunned and doubtful. Jihu, Fatty Dunair, and the others were speechless. This little kid really had the nerve to say that there was an accident when crossing the tribulation. They really wanted to say that he should be struck by lightning just because he pretended to be 13. He was just a little kid, yet he had to act like an old man. The group of youths from the Ji clan couldn't stand it. Of course, they couldn't expose him. "Yeah, you really know how to boast." The Thunder Clan youngster sneered. It was clear that he wasn't intimidated yet. He was full of malice as his thoughts spun. "Shut up," Chu Feng berated. "Okay, don't talk anymore." The sparkling and snow-white little girl also spoke like this. Her two eyes had multicolored beams of light as she shot a glance at the Lightning Clan youth. His heart immediately began to throb. What kind of joke was this? Being scanned by a 2-year-old girl like this actually made him feel pressured. He felt a strong sense of unease. This made the Thunder Clan youth startled and angry, but in the end, he decisively shut his mouth and didn't say anything else. "That's right." Chu Feng nodded, glanced at him, and said, "Young people are always impulsive. Their mouths are hairless and can't be trusted. Remember, silence is gold. Keep it up. After being lectured by him, the young man from the Thunder Clan was infuriated. He really wanted to give him a kick and turn him into a bloody gourd. But when he saw the look in the girl's eyes, he endured it. Jihu, Fatty Dunair, and the other G-Clan youths were immediately convinced by Chu Feng. They sighed in admiration that this bedwetting baby really knew how to brag and scare people. Senior, actually, I also have a kind of illusion. I feel like I'm another person, as if I have a past life. I often see many old scenes in my dreams. The little girl suddenly spoke like this with an innocent and unaffected look. At the same time, she was quite humble as she asked for guidance. Chu Feng almost wanted to ask, who were you in your past life? Because this was like falling into a state of confusion in the womb. However, at the crucial moment, he endured it and muttered inwardly. The core disciples from the super ancient evolutionary sects were really not simple. She dared to trick him at such a young age? He didn't really believe it. How could it be so coincidental to meet a reincarnator? Moreover, she even dared to say in front of everyone. This involved a taboo. Her clansmen definitely wouldn't allow her to do this. Chu Feng couldn't help but sigh. This child who was destined to fight against the dragon race was indeed extraordinary. She matured early and actually wanted to trick him. Woo, this old one can tell that you really aren't ordinary. Let's go, us two old fellas will have a chat. We'll leave this place to the youngsters. Let them have some fun. Who hasn't been young before? After speaking, Chu Feng walked towards the other side of the natural crater. Everyone became speechless. They watched as the two youngest children left, leaving just like that. They actually treated them like juniors. How could they endure this? In reality, there were some tribe youths who stared at the backs of those two children, truly half believing and half doubting them. In the distance, Chu Feng wasn't worried at all. He had confidence inwardly. Right now, Dongqing and Divine Temple's fairy were his backing. Moreover, if he really felt like things weren't good, he could just stay in a different place. He always had some thoughts, not willing to stay in desolate border for a long time. If not for Divine Temple's fairy bloodline being able to supplement his innate attributes, he would have left at any time. This old one is from the human race. I wonder which race friend belongs to, and where did you come from in your previous life? Chu Feng had his hands behind his back. He bathed in the sunset glow, his entire body covered in a layer of divine radiance. My race belongs to a branch of the human race. The little girl revealed a faint smile, revealing a bit of information as she observed Chu Feng's expression. Chu Feng stared blankly, and then he shivered inwardly. The so-called human race branch was just a polite way of saying it, but in reality, it represented an extremely terrifying and transcendent status. In the past, when a Yang realm was extremely ancient and flourishing, there were a few powerful evolutionary families that became independent from the human race, establishing themselves as a race. They all possessed extremely shocking natural talents. Their ancestors had evolved incomparably powerful bloodlines, and they could even pass them on to their descendants. They were far above. For example, the war race with purple blood flowing through their limbs and bones, the power of their bloodline, known as kings. They could move unhindered through the great wastelands, giving others headaches and chills. There were also some clans whose children would be born with heavenly eyes. Their eye abilities were unmatched, able to wipe out enemies with a single glance. They were known as the Heavenly Eye race. There was also the Heaven race with black and yellow blood, the Immortal race with immortal mist naturally lingering around them, and so on. These were all humans that had become independent in the past, and later generations had collectively called them the Alien Wastelands human race. This highlighted the extraordinariness of their predecessors in a certain special ancient period, as well as the nobility of their identities. After separating from a human race, it could be said that they reigned supreme in the 9 heavens. Now, some of these Alien Wastelands human race said that they were a branch of the human race in order to express their modesty, but most of them wouldn't even mention it. They had long since ceased to consider themselves members of the human race. In reality, some of these races had indeed undergone great changes after evolution. They had their own unique characteristics, such as the vertical eye between their brows, the most powerful heavenly wings, and 3 heads and 6 arms. Chu Feng had heard similar rumors when he was in the netherworld, but they weren't as detailed. That was because they originated from the great wastelands of the Yang realm. He could only sigh. During a certain period of time, the human race was too prosperous. Those so-called alien wastelands human race were once the ultimate aristocratic families of the human race with the strongest inheritance. In the end, because they were too powerful, they thought that they had transcended above and separated themselves from the ordinary human race. He didn't know what rank his humanoid monarch bloodline was among the alien wastelands human race, and whether it was strong enough. However, Chu Feng was also a little surprised. It seemed that he hadn't heard of the so-called humanoid monarch bloodline among the alien wastelands human race. He suspected that it wasn't among them. Didn't they become independent? People couldn't forget their roots. Chu Feng actually hoped that the ancestors of this branch hadn't been separated and become a member of the alien wastelands human race. I didn't expect fellow Taoists to have such a great background. You're actually from the alien wastelands human race. No wonder you can reincarnate. Amazing. When they heard Chu Feng's words, a sneer came from a distance. An old man really couldn't hold it in any longer. After holding in for a long time, he walked out of the forest and rushed over. "Ninth Grandpa," the little girl called out sweetly. Obviously, this old man didn't believe that Chu Feng was an old monster of several thousand years. Seeing him act like this, he couldn't hold it in any longer and showed himself. Moreover, he didn't conceal his investigation either. He separated a wisp of 5-color divine light and covered Chu Feng. With a flip of Chu Feng's hand, a jade tablet appeared in his palm. It reflected a small black fish. Runes bloomed and black light flickered. This image was very strange. Looking closely, it was actually an Yin fish from the Taiji diagram. It floated in the air. This was the jade tablet that Dong Qing gave him. He told him that if he encountered an inexplicable situation, he just had to show it directly. Those who understood would naturally be fearful and would ensure his safety. At that time, Chu Feng was still cursing silently. Did it have to be useful when he met someone who understood? Dong Qing gave him this jade tablet mainly because the noble descendants who attacked the dragon's lair were building temporary imperial residences near the Ji tribe. He was afraid that if Chu Feng encountered those people, he would have some mishap. Sorry for my disrespect. It's actually you guys. The inheritance hasn't ended yet. You're still in the Yang realm. The old man actually had a grave expression. After being obstructed by the Yin fish, he decisively stopped. He said to the little girl, "Ying, you go over there and wait. I'll have a few words with this little brother." The beautiful little girl was very unwilling, but in the end, she still left and waited in the distance. Chu Feng opened his mouth and said, "This old man is over 3,200 years old. Little brother, you might not be as old as me." In the distance, the little girl's ears were especially sensitive. After hearing this, she really wanted to say that this guy was too shameless. He was still pretending and taking advantage of her grandpa Gio. The corner of the old man's mouth twitched. This brat was really evil. He actually dared to call him little brother. He looked at Chu Feng and said, "You're still young." In particular, he even glanced a few times at the space between Chu Feng's legs. He couldn't help but sneer. Chu Feng's eyebrows slightly raised. He really wanted to say that this old thing actually dared to mock him. This was no wonder. He was wearing Ji Hu's animal skin waistcoat. Although it could be used as an overcoat, the space between his legs was still cold. This old guy definitely could sense that he was actually only wearing this piece of clothing. His buttocks were bare inside. Chu Feng said proudly, "How is this old man young? I'm still a few years older than you. I'm even older than you." The old man once again sneered and said, "Little guy, you are indeed still young. Come, tell this old man, where is your family's adult?" Moreover, his pair of old eyes glanced randomly again. Chu Feng held his small hands behind his back. He also glanced at the old man and carefully sized him up. Then, he said rather calmly, "How can a sparrow know the will of a pung? The size of a pung a pot. This old man doesn't want to talk to you. Not far away, Jihu, Fatty Dumpling, and the others were dumbfounded. They were not outsiders and naturally understood Chu Feng. They knew what nonsense he was talking about. They all spat out the wine in their mouths. Chapter 1038. The old man's face glowed with a dark light. He really wanted to strangle him to death. Earlier on, he felt that this child was not simple and was a little monster. He cherished his talent, so he walked out of the forest. But now, no matter how he looked at this kid, he was not pleasing to the eye. You're already a bad person at such a young age. How bad will you be when you grow up? I want to help your sect clean up your sect so that it won't bring disaster to the desolate land in the future. The old man said coldly. His eyes were pure, and there was no fear in Chu Feng's eyes. Forget it. I'm already so old. Why should I be so serious with a child like you? Bring me to your elders. I have something to say to them. The old man's face was filled with generosity, and the aura of an elder became amiable again. Chu Feng looked askance at him. This old man changed from arrogance to humility. Was he asking for a favor? Just now, he wanted to teach him a lesson with a black face. If you have something to say, please speak. This old man can make the decision, Chu Feng said. The old man felt his teeth hurt. This damn kid was just a fart. He was addicted to calling him I. He really wanted to grab him and beat him until he cried for his parents. However, this also dispelled his suspicions. He was more and more sure that this was a child and not some reincarnated monster. Otherwise, who would take the initiative to say that they had regained their youth? Brat, if you dare to mention me again, I'll beat you up. Let's talk over here. The old man brought Chu Feng into the depths of the forest, blocking everyone's line of sight. He wanted to ask for a medicine from Chu Feng's sect. Chu Feng shook his head. He could not make the decision. The fairy in the temple was quite prejudiced against him because he had wet her bed. Even Dongqing was not so easy to talk to. If he knew that he was making random promises, he would probably open his bloody mouth and give him a beating. I won't ask for it for free. Do you see this heavenly pit? It contains astonishing fortune. I want you to share it with your sect. The old man's expression was solemn. Chu Feng's heart moved. This old man was a knowledgeable person. He actually knew that the heavenly pit was extraordinary. My sect is very close to this place. Is there a need for you to mention this blessed land? We've been paying attention to it. Chu Feng said calmly. No matter how much this old man knew, he had to tell him that this was already a dish on his sect's plate. This place has been concealed from the heavenly secrets by someone. By chance, I came across a stone engraving in the ruins of the alien wasteland and saw through the heavenly secrets. Without a special technique, no one can obtain the fortune of this place. When Chu Feng heard this, his heart pounded violently. This matter involved the human race of the variant desolate. This was too terrifying. Was this place even more astonishing than he had imagined? He was suspicious, but unfortunately, he was not strong enough and could not go down to investigate. The old man continued. Only by using the method recorded on the stone inscription can we uncover the truth of this place and obtain the blessing. Chu Feng was reserved and said, the secrets of this place are all known to my sect. This place already has an owner. You'd better leave. How is that possible? Do you know that there's a vine underground that has not withered? However, it has been concealed by someone. The old man revealed a trace of the truth. This made Chu Feng's heart tremble. The so-called special gourd terrain of the so-called blessed land was only nourished by the veins of the earth and watered by spiritual essence. Once this place dried up, there would be no vine left. If the earth vine was still here, then it was truly extraordinary. It was even more astonishing than his previous judgment. He reckoned that this was a heaven gourd that could raise a celestial venerable in the end. If his conjecture was correct, then the nourishing land he was looking for had a foothold. It was far more astonishing than what he had previously imagined. Chu Feng was inwardly shocked, as expected of the records of the alien wasteland's human race. Just by relying on this terrain, it was possible to raise a celestial venerable. Even if the actual effect was not that strong, It was enough to use this place to raise one's body at a discount. However, could this old man's word be trusted? Chu Feng's expression was calm as he said, "This place is called the Heaven Gourd Terrain. There used to be a vine that bore 3 flowers. As the saying goes, the Tao begets one, and the 3 beget all things. It was too heaven-defying and thus was not tolerated by the world. One of the flowers transformed into a purple golden gourd and escaped beyond the 33 layers of heaven. The second flower grew into an underworld gourd and sank into the 9 nether. The third flower has formed a young gourd and has yet to mature." He spoke solemnly. At first, he was just making things up, but as he spoke, even Chu Feng himself was astonished. That was because according to the silver page of domains left behind by the Sage Master, it really was possible to form such an extreme terrain. The old man was dumbfounded. This child's sect really knew? It was even more than he knew. He was intimidated. Moments later, he raised a question. "But this is only a terrain. The so-called gourd vine is only the spiritual essence of the earth's veins and not an actual object. You said it can fly through the sky and escape into the earth after forming a gourd?" "Yes, after my sect's research, the heaven gourd terrain can transform into a gourd of laws." "That's a celestial artifact?" The old man was even more astonished. He was sure that this was the research of the other party's sect. A brat like him couldn't understand so much. Chu Feng said solemnly, "A heaven gourd formed from the condensation of laws and order is naturally no small matter, but it's still not qualified to be called a celestial artifact." "It seems this place has indeed been thoroughly researched by your sect," said the old man. He had unknowingly used the term little friend and no longer had any intention of beating this damned child. That was because what Chu Feng said matched a small part of the stone carvings. "That's not necessarily the case. My sect is also somewhat apprehensive about this place. Since you've seen through the heavenly mysteries in the human ruins, why don't we discuss it together?" Chu Feng said modestly. This old fellow was too shrewd. He understood immediately and could even talk about cooperation. "Why don't we go find your elders first, and then we'll go down and explore together," said the old man. Chu Feng smiled and said, "Let me see your methods first. When the time comes, I'll be able to report it to my elders." He urged the old man to take him to the bottom of the sinkhole and show him some of his abilities. The old man nodded and said, "That's fine. This place has concealed the heavenly mysteries. I'll try to uncover a piece of the truth." Whoosh! He brought Chu Feng down to the bottom of the sinkhole. It was really too deep, and the bottom was as dark as an abyss. "We're here." Standing at the bottom, the old man touched it and then muttered some kind of ancient incantation. He also carved all kinds of mysterious symbols on the ground. This was part of the records in the human ruins in the alien wilderness. Whoosh! Not long after, the bottom of the sinkhole changed. A large area of black mist rose and cold air blew. In an instant, Chu Feng and the old man's hair stood on end. They felt that this place was a bit strange. Chu Feng had a layer of goosebumps on his body. It was too cold. Especially the next moment, he felt a cold hand on the back of his neck. "Old man, why are you touching my neck? Are you trying to scare me?" Chu Feng asked in dissatisfaction. "This old man was here. When did I touch you?" Brat, are you up to no good? You dare to tease this old man." The old man's body tensed up, feeling that something was wrong, because an ice-cold hand had touched his buttocks. Whoosh! This old man was like a startled rabbit, faster than anything. He directly jumped up and ran, rushing into the sky. He left Chu Feng here and disappeared. This old bastard. Chu Feng cursed. Seeing that the situation was not right, he ran away and left the old man here. "Old man, do you still want a medicine? Do you still want to talk about cooperation? Hurry up and take me away." Chu Feng shouted. He felt that the surroundings were getting colder and colder. "Little friend, don't worry, this old man is coming," the old man shouted. However, he dilly-dallied for a long time, continuously observing and probing from above. Only when he was sure that there was no danger did he land again. He grabbed Chu Feng and flew away. Chu Feng looked at him from the corner of his eyes. If there was danger just now, this old bastard definitely wouldn't have come down. He was too unreliable. Go to your sect, the old man said. All right, Chu Feng nodded. At this time, the sky darkened, and the sunset glow had already disappeared. The old man waved his hand and called that girl over. He brought the two children and flew into the sky, rushing towards the Ji tribe according to Chu Feng's directions. This is your mountain? The old man was very surprised because this short mountain was too inconspicuous, and there was only a dilapidated temple. Dongqing walked out and stared at the old man. Greetings to this warrior. The old man greeted with a smile. Chu Feng said, Sister Dongqing, this can't be tolerated. No matter what, you should at least break a few of his bones, right? The old man was dumbfounded. This burly warrior was a woman? Dongqing opened her bloody mouth and asked Chu Feng, Why did you bring an outsider back? There's a bit of a situation. Chu Feng waved his hand and had the old man wait at the foot of the mountain. Dongqing brought Chu Feng into the temple. The inside of the temple immediately soared with light, covering this place and isolating it from the outside world. Sister Dongqing, we discovered a blessed land that can create a sky sovereign. Chu Feng quickly informed her of the specific situation. You said that the old man wants to ask for a little heaven pellet in exchange. Dongqing asked. This was the medicine that the old man hoped for. Yes. Chu Feng nodded. Do you know how precious a little heaven pellet is? What exactly is it? Dongqing asked. I don't know. It's those minerals that you cooked and fused together. 100 times of dosage can be used to cook a little heaven pellet. This should be considered a rare, great medicine, right? Chu Feng was shocked. Extremely precious. Those minerals are very hard to find, and they've almost all been dug out. Dongqing nodded. Chu Feng waved a small hand and said heroically, Then I'll give him 1% of the little heaven pellet first, which is the dosage needed to cook me once. You're quite generous. This kind of dosage is also priceless. Dongqing rolled her eyes. She was not charming at all and was a bit fierce. No, what I mean is the minerals that I use today, the residue from cooking me haven't been thrown away yet, right? I'll give it to that old man later. It won't be a waste at all. Dongqing was speechless. After a long time, she said, Why are you so sarcastic? Moreover, there isn't much of the medicine left in there. Chu Feng mumbled, Who told him to threaten me and even want to beat me up? In the end, he didn't even save me and threw me into the heavenly pit. In the end, he added with a serious expression, Sister Dongqing, that heavenly pit is not simple. It might really be able to raise a sky sovereign. We have to go and take a look. His current strength was not enough. He still needed to borrow the help of Dongqing and the fairy in the temple. Otherwise, he could just investigate it himself. Just now, when the back of his neck was touched, he felt that that place was too bewitching. There was something extraordinarily terrifying about it. Dongqing nodded and said, All right then, I'll accompany you on a trip and take a look at that so-called heavenly pit. Not long after, Chu Feng and Dongqing walked out of the temple together and called the old man over. Here, this is the little heaven pill. In order to express my sincerity, I'll give you one, Chu Feng said. He was carrying a plate with a pill the size of a human head on it. The old man's eyes stared straight. This was the little heaven pill. Even if it had the word heaven on it, it shouldn't be this big, right? A pill the size of a human head was simply unheard of. Furthermore, it was pitch black, and its appearance was too ugly. You don't want it? Then forget it. Chu Feng carried the plate and was about to walk into the temple. I want it, the old man hurriedly shouted. The little heaven pill was too useful to him. It could mend the soul and nourish the innate. But this pill is a little too heavy. The old man estimated that this pill was at least 3 caddies heavy, and this was still the most conservative estimate. Chu Feng said, Be content. Since the alien desolate era until now, so many years have passed. Even some ultimate figures have died, and even some inheritances have been severed for countless eras. The little heaven pill's pill formula has also been lost many times. To be able to restore it to this stage is already considered a heavenly blessing. Dongqing nodded. This was the truth. Some materials had already gone extinct, and they could only find substitutes. The amount of minerals used had greatly increased, so now they had to boil a lot each time. It could not be compared to the past. All right then, many thanks. This time, it will definitely be a pleasant cooperation. The old man nodded and very solemnly received the pill the size of a human head. He was about to put it into the spatial jade jar. Chu Feng stared at him solemnly and said, "Don't blame me for not reminding you. After the pill formula has been slightly changed, this little heaven pill cannot be stored for long. After refining it, it must be eaten as soon as possible. Otherwise, the medicinal effects will be seriously lost." The old man was at a loss. Holding the plate, his nose moved as he carefully sniffed again and again. Although such a large pill was pitch black, it rippled with a special chestnut flower fragrance. It was no different from the legends. He felt that it should be the real thing, but he was still too conflicted. He said, "Such a large pill. It's even larger than an ordinary robust man's meal. It's a little hard to swallow." "That's up to you. If you don't want to eat it, then return it to me," Chu Feng said. In reality, he was waiting for the old man to eat it. Once he ate it, he would tell the old man that such a large pill, he had to eat at least 100 of them to be considered complete. It was comparable to a true little heaven pill. Chapter 1039. The old man held the black pill with both hands and felt a wave of dizziness. How was he supposed to eat such a big pill? If it weren't for the fact that his soul had suffered serious injuries in the past, and it was difficult to heal, he wouldn't be so conflicted. In the end, the old man's vision went black. He opened his mouth and bit down without a care. Others swallowed pills and could swallow them just by opening their mouths, but he had to chew on it bit by bit as if it were an extra large black bun. This kind of sourness, there was no need to mention it. After this bite, the old man's mouth was completely black. This was the first time he had experienced this, but in an instant, he puffed up his cheeks and stared with wide eyes. "Why, does it have a damp taste?" he cried out indistinctly. Chu Feng explained calmly, "It's just been refined, so it's naturally still fresh." The old man stared at him, his expression changing continuously. Many pills were sparkling and translucent, and their appearances were excellent. Even though some had returned to their natural state and looked like ordinary pills, they were as hard as fine iron and could be stored for a long time without being damp. Seeing him like this, Chu Feng said, "I was afraid of making you wait too long, so I collected the juice in a hurry and wasn't very thorough." The old man was truly hesitant and deeply doubtful. He wanted to spit it all out in one go, but he felt that he was a bit too hasty and careless in taking the medicine. Chu Feng was dissatisfied. "It's fine if you don't want to eat it, just spit it out. Actually, you should eat a bit and test the medicine's effects." The old man clenched his teeth and was quite decisive. He directly swallowed it all. He was sure that even if there were problems, he could expel it all from his body. It's really effective. My tattered soul feels much more comfortable." He was surprised that the medicine's effects were immediate. Then, he held the head-sized black pill and began to quickly chew on it. It was as if he was eating steamed buns or cornbread, wolfing it down. "Ninth Grandpa, refine it slowly. Don't eat it all in one go," the snow-white little girl reminded him. She had always felt that such a big pill was too excessive. The old man nodded, but he quickly finished it. He estimated that this pill weighed at least 3 caddies and 8 tails. He was rather speechless. What AF asterisk king big pill. Just one was enough to fill him up. "Grandpa Ninth, what do you think? How do you feel?" asked the little girl, her face filled with worry. She glared angrily at Chu Feng and couldn't shake the feeling that he was a bad egg. It's all right. Apart from the chestnut flower fragrance, there's also a milky fragrance. It's not too bad." The old man nodded. At the same time, he silently sensed that his soul was quite comfortable. Then he stared at Chu Feng suspiciously and said, "Why is he the same as you?" Both had the same milky fragrance. Chu Feng was very calm and said, "Nonsense. This is the pill I refined. Of course it will taste the same as me. I am pure and untainted. My Tao body gives off a fragrance." "Liar." The little girl glared at him. Chu Feng ignored him and asked the old man, "How is it?" The old man didn't make a sound as he refined the medicinal effects in his body. Specks of black light spread into his soul light. Some of the small wounds healed, but it was still far from being completely healed. It's effective, but compared to the legendary curative effect, there's quite a big difference. The old man's expression was a little unsightly. Chu Feng nodded and said, That's right. The original pill recipe has been lost. This is the concise version of the pill recipe later on. You have to eat more than 100 of them to see the effects. It's equivalent to one original Little Heaven pill." "How many?" The old man staggered when he heard this and almost fell over. "More than 100. Chu Feng told him very seriously. The old man was dumbstruck. He was completely dumbfounded. This big pill was as big as a person's head, and it weighed no less than 3 caddies. He was already full after eating one. This was already embarrassing enough. He didn't want to eat this kind of pill in this life. How could there be a big pill that needed to be held and gnawed on with both hands? But now he heard that he had to eat 100 of such a big pill. It was too shameful and absurd. He wanted to strangle this brat to death. "How dare you bully me?" the old man said angrily. "Spit it out. I'm not letting you eat it." Chu Feng looked even angrier than him, forcing him to Huandong. He added, "Whether it's true or not, haven't you experienced it yourself?" The old man felt guilty. He had deeply experienced that the condensation of a part of the soul fragment was indeed extraordinary. However, to eat 100 of such a big pill, no matter how he looked at it, he felt that it was a little ridiculous. The pill is too big, and there are too many of them. Towards the end of his sentence, his voice became softer, and he lacked confidence. Chu Feng said, "The recipe of the pill has been lost for many times, and it was difficult to restore it. Naturally, it's far from the legend." The old man completely lost his temper. He had a smile on his face. As long as the injury to his soul could be healed, eating 100 pills was not a big deal. Chu Feng said, "Sister Dongqing, give him a list. Write down some of the minerals needed to refine the pill. We can't afford to provide him with 100 pills. Let him prepare the various medicinal ingredients himself." Dongqing did not even need to write, and directly gave the old man a long list. It was obvious that she had prepared it in advance. Of course, it was impossible to reveal the real recipe of the pill, but it did mention some rare materials. Some were the minerals needed for the original recipe of the pill, some were the materials needed for the modified lesser heavenly pill, and some were highly toxic. All kinds of materials were mixed together. Even the minerals that could be easily gathered in the recipe of the pill were not listed. This was Chu Feng's suggestion to extort money from the old man. If the other party was really a human from the alien wilderness, he would most likely be able to gather all of them. The old man looked at the list and felt a little dizzy. Some of these materials were almost extinct and were especially difficult to find. However, he still put it away in the end, frowning. "Let's go to the heavenly pit," Dongqing said. She was more interested in that place. "I'm willing to give up part of the benefits and fortunes of the heavenly pit in exchange for the remaining lesser heavenly pills." On the way, the old man discussed. Even with his powerful clan background, it was not easy to gather all the materials in the original recipe of the pill. Dongqing said, Let's see if the fortunes in the heavenly pit are valuable enough." In the blink of an eye, the 4 of them arrived near the heavenly pit. In the end, Chu Feng and the little girl were left on the surface. Dongqing and the old man did not bring them down. "I'll wait for the good news." Chu Feng greeted Dongqing and told her to be careful. He was looking forward to the heavenly pit. "Let's go, little girl. I'll take you to walk on the moon and drink." Chu Feng called out to the little girl. "Oomph." The little girl snorted and did not want to pay attention to him. She always felt that Chu Feng was not a good person. Her skin was snow white, and there was a small dimple on her left cheek. She was very beautiful. Chu Feng did not mind and went to find Ji Hu and Fatty Dumpling. The moonlight shone brightly on the mountainous area. The sound of youths drinking and making a ruckus could be heard from afar. It was very noisy, and the atmosphere was cheerful. "Hey, little boy, you're back. Come, let's drink." Fatty Dumpling swayed as he carried a jar of wine over and pulled Chu Feng to drink. Not far away, a bonfire was flickering. A large group of people surrounded the bonfire and roasted all kinds of game. There were many wine jars on the table. There were beautiful girls from other tribes dancing a savage war dance. Their postures were beautiful and wild. Chu Feng took the wine jar and drank a mouthful. However, he immediately spat out half a mouthful. This wine was too spicy and bitter. It did not taste good at all. This attracted the laughter of a group of men and women. They were all teasing him. "Little boy, are you okay? Do you want us to prepare some goat milk for you?" The people from other tribes were all teasing him. "Come, let big sister hug you. You're so cute." There were also bold and unrestrained girls who teased him. Chu Feng was embarrassed. It was not because of their words, but because his current body was not used to strong spirits. His little face turned red after only half a mouthful. "Where's Jihu?" He changed the topic. He did not want to be teased by others. He wanted to talk with the boy from the Thunder Clan. "Why is he not back yet?" Fatty Dumpling said. Then he sobered up a little. He felt that Jihu had been gone for a long time. Could he have been beaten up by the boy from the Thunder Clan? Let's go and find him. That boy from the Thunder Clan is not a good person. The people of the G clan were all shocked. They all stood up and rushed into the dense forest not far away. As they approached the dense forest, Fatty Dumpling, Chu Feng, and the others heard the crisp sound of a slap. Slap! Then they saw Jihu's face covered in blood. They also saw the boy from the Thunder Clan laughing heartily. It was not him who slapped Jihu, but someone else. It was a young man. He sat there with a feminine smile. He slapped Jihu 6 or 7 times. His mouth and nose were covered in blood. His eyes were so swollen that he could not open them. F***CKU. Fatty Dumpling roared. A group of teenagers from the G clan shouted. They all threw their wine jars and roared. They rushed over and attacked. There was nothing to say. However, Fatty Dumpling and the others rushed over quickly and retreated quickly. The people at the front were kicked and blood spurted out of their mouths. They flew back. A bunch of little bastards. How dare you attack us? In the forest, the light was dim. Only then did everyone realize that other than the young man who slapped Jihu, there were 3 other men in their 20s. They were all adults. Thunder Clan, you broke the rules. You bullied the young and even humiliated us. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to start a war between the 2 clans? A teenager from the G clan shouted. They were mostly between 12 to 15 years old. G clan, you're nothing. If it wasn't for the rule of the Alliance that we can't annex other clans at will, my Thunder Clan would only need to send half of our men to destroy your clan 3 or 4 times. That Thunder Clan youngster sneered. His name was Lei Ling. He was the one who wanted to talk to Jihu and led him here. At the same time, he was also the one who had been hostile to Chu Feng. Fatty Dumpling shouted angrily. Lei Ling, do you have any shame? We are having a gathering, and you actually invited your 3rd brother to attack Jihu. You are really a piece of sh**t. Do you think we don't have brothers? A group of teenagers from the G clan also started to make a ruckus. They were very angry. It was supposed to be a gathering of teenagers, but in the end, Lei Ling invited a few young men to bully people here. Lei Ling put on a fake smile and said, "Forget it. Your brother can't beat the people of the same generation in the Thunder Clan. It's not like we haven't fought before. My 3rd brother is here. You all come and greet him." The young man who slapped who was sitting on a big rock. He was quite calm. He looked at the crowd with a sneer and waved at the teenagers from the G clan. "Come here. Your brother has to greet me. Today, if you all kowtow to me, I won't make things difficult for you. You are Lei Yun. You are too shameless. You destroyed one of Jihu's brother's arms, and now you come here to bully us. If you have the guts, go beat up Fatty Dumpling's brother." A teenager from the G clan said angrily. At this moment, Jihu could not move. He stood there. Obviously, his body was sealed. His cheeks were swollen, and a few of his teeth had fallen out. He had been bullied badly, and was covered in blood. Lei Yun sneered and said, "You are just a bunch of kids. How dare you talk nonsense to me? Although I can't kill you today, I can give you a good beating." He stood up and walked over with the other 3 young men. At the same time, the teenagers from the Thunder Clan also arrived and surrounded the place. At this moment, the people from the Thunder Clan saw Chu Feng. "Oh, this little bastard also came. Just in time. I heard that Uncle Lei Jiao was drenched in urine by him. Today, let's throw him half to death," Lei Yun said with a sneer. Chu Feng was a bit annoyed. He actually participated in a fight between a group of teenagers. At the same time, he was angry. The people from the Thunder Clan were really a bit too arrogant. There was nothing more to say. He did not want to be entangled with a group of teenagers. He could not afford to lose face, but he also could not tolerate their impudence. He directly took the initiative to attack. He held a jade tablet in his hand and jumped over. It was the one Dong Qing gave him. It reflected a black fish swimming in the air and blossoming with symbols. Chu Feng swung the fish jade tablet and smashed it randomly. As a result, the symbols collided with each other. The leading teenagers screamed miserably and were sent flying by the symbols reflected by the black fish. They coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. There was no suspense. The life-saving jade tablet given to him by Dong Qing was not simple. The few teenagers from the Thunder Clan fell down. Their bodies were covered in blood. The other teenagers were also lying on the ground. Their mouths were full of bloody foam as they groaned. "Beat them up, Fatty Dumpling," and the others shouted as they all pounced forward. There were also some people who removed Ji Hu's restriction and pulled him to attack together. As soon as Ji Hu could move, he roared and pounced towards Lei Yun and Lei Ling. After picking them up, he violently smashed them down. The 2 brothers were in a miserable state. Their mouths were full of blood and their teeth had been knocked out. "Don't kill them," a few teenagers from the Ji clan shouted. They were afraid that things would get out of hand. Chu Feng walked over and arrived in front of Lei Yun and Lei Ling. He lowered his head and looked at the 2 brothers who were covered in blood and had been beaten half to death by Ji Hu. "Say, your Thunder Jiao has always been thinking about me. You're still a middle-aged man, yet you're still so vengeful." Chu Feng was disdainful. Then he looked down at the 2 and said, "Since you're standing up for your Uncle Lei Jiao, then you'll receive the same treatment as him." Then he poured the water all over the 2 brothers' heads and faces. F***ck me. The 2 immediately fainted. "Pervert." The little girl ran over to watch the commotion and just happened to see this scene. She immediately became embarrassed and ran away. Fatty Dumpling shouted, "The little girl is still the best. Brothers, let's teach these bastards an unforgettable lesson. Pour water on them." Then the people from the other tribes were dumbfounded. The people from the Thunder Clan roared again and again. They were all about to explode. Chu Feng rubbed his forehead and said, "You guys are really too naughty." Many people wanted to say that he was an instigator and a bad example. Okay? Caw! Suddenly, a terrifying crow's cry pierced through the sky and broke the tranquility of this mountain range. At the same time, a black cloud covered the bright moon and the stars in the sky. Everyone was terrified. They raised their heads and looked up, their bodies trembling. Large amounts of black mist rushed out from the natural crater. It turned into a dark crow, covering the stars and moon. That was formed from a black mist, representing terror and inauspiciousness. "Ji Hu, Fatty Dumpling, let's go," Chu Feng shouted, calling out to Ji Clan's people. He knew that something major happened. Shocking changes were happening in the natural crater. Honglong, the great earth trembled. Then Dong Qing and the elder rushed over in a sorry state. Their eyes were actually full of fear. Then, with a wave of their sleeves, they separately brought Chu Feng and the little girl with them. "Wait, bring Ji Hu, Fatty Dumpling, and the others." Chu Feng was anxious. So, the group of youngsters were all brought over. With Dong Qing's speed, they disappeared in an instant. "What's going on?" After returning to the tribe, Chu Feng asked Dong Qing, "Something big is going to happen in the desolate border. I contacted the young miss and grandma to come back." Dong Qing's expression was serious. Right now, he had already safely brought the group of children back to the tribe. Chapter 1040. The moonlit night was devoid of light, and the originally pure white radiance was obscured by the gloomy mist. The entire mountain forest appeared somewhat chilly, and all kinds of vicious birds and fierce beasts in the mountains were quiet, without a trace of sound. "Go to sleep," Dong Qing ordered. She was going to use a spell to contact her family's young miss. Chu Feng saw how serious she was and knew that he definitely wouldn't be able to get anything out of her now. 9 golden lamps appeared and hung in the air, illuminating the divine temple in a hazy yet brilliant light. The 9 lamps contrasted with each other, reflecting each other's splendor. Dong Qing performed a spell in the temple while muttering an incantation. Then she let out a light shout, and the wick of the 9 lamps each lit up with a flame that condensed together in the air. After the 9 clusters of flames became one, a dazzling golden color appeared and finally transformed into a mirror. At first, the mirror was blurry, but it quickly became clear and reflected the figure of that fairy. At this moment, she was wearing a silver battle suit instead of a long skirt. She was standing on a precipitous cliff, and around her were dilapidated ancient temples. There were also a few dried up but glowing divine corpses piled up in piles. She was exploring an extremely desolate area, and there were actually a large number of divine corpses there. "Young miss, the situation here is abnormal," Dong Qing reported. Although Chu Feng was standing outside the temple, he couldn't hear anything. That screen of light isolated him from the outside, ensuring the secrecy of that kind of conversation. Early in the morning, Chu Feng faced the morning glow and exercised his muscles and bones. Then, he boiled the minerals and climbed into the steamer. He was completely steaming himself. Originally, he boiled it once every 2 or 3 days, but recently it had been changed to once a day. He didn't resist at all, and instead became more and more proactive. Now, he already knew that it would be difficult to collect such a pot of minerals, even if he searched for hundreds of thousands of li. This was the essence condensed from a large stretch of rivers and mountains. Not to mention a pot of it, even a drop of soup could cause the great demons deep in the mountains to fight to the death and bleed over it. This was the concentrated essence of the mountains and rivers. Dong Qing walked out of the divine temple and waited for Chu Feng to finish grimacing and climb out of the steamer. Only then did she open her mouth and say, "Today I'll teach you a fist technique." Did the sun rise from the west? Chu Feng opened his mouth. He usually dawdled with her for a long time, wanting to learn all kinds of techniques, but in the end, he was always rejected. "We're afraid that you'll be defeated in a single punch after entering the dragon's lair and lose our face," Dong Qing said expressionlessly. Chu Feng was startled. It seemed that the day of entering the dragon's nest was not far away, and it would be very dangerous. "What happened last night? What did you find at the bottom of the sinkhole?" He couldn't help but ask. Dong Qing's expression was solemn, and divine light blossomed from her bell-like eyes. She seemed somewhat fierce as she stared at Chu Feng and said, "How do you know that place so well?" "What do I know?" Chu Feng looked confused. "Didn't you tell that old guy to talk to him?" Dong Qing's expression was grave. Very quickly, Chu Feng learned what had happened. After Dong Qing and the others had entered the bottom of the sinkhole, the old man had used the technique he had seen in the alien wasteland's human ruins to undo a portion of the seal on the blessed land. They entered a cave where immortal mist and starlight coexisted. They saw a few imprints, the reappearance of the past scenes. There was a vine there with 3 flowers in full bloom. The first flower transformed into a purple gold gourd which broke through the sky. The second flower transformed into an underworld gourd which sank into the ground. Chu Feng was immediately flabbergasted after hearing this kind of description. At that time, he was full of nonsense to deceive that old man. He didn't take it seriously at all, but in the end, it actually came true. Although he thought about it in hindsight, his nonsense might become reality under extreme circumstances. The probability was only 1 in 10 million. "Even my nonsense can become reality?" Chu Feng cried out. Waves surged in his heart. He thought about it carefully and felt that he wasn't speaking nonsense at that time. It should be a kind of inner reaction. After all, he was proficient in domains and was subconsciously deducing. Dongqing narrated the details. She and the old man went deep into the cave and finally found the netherworld stone door at a depth of 50,000 kilometers. Moreover, a crack had already been opened long ago. Wait a moment. What underworld? Netherworld? What kind of places are these? Tell me about them. Chu Feng interrupted her. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to hear her clearly. Vile Earth, the land of resurrection for the dead. It's a land of calamity where the deceased deities and powerhouses crawled out from their graves. Dongqing said expressionlessly. Chu Feng was shaken. It was indeed a dangerous place. It was worthy of the name Underworld. Dongqing added on, saying, of course, this is still only the surface. After a few ancient powerhouses died and were buried in that kind of place, they turned into evil beings and returned. This is only a part of the dark underworld, vile Earth's effect. Even the powerful Empyreans that are alive today cannot clearly explain the deeper nature. You pushed open the stone door and entered the underworld. Chu Feng revealed a serious expression. In the underground underworld, the stone door was simple and unadorned. It was carved with indescribable ancient patterns and was completely silent. Upon closer inspection, there was a pair of dark crows blocking the door like door gods. After we entered, we saw a shriveled gourd that was placed in the underworld. It was extremely similar to the gourd that sank into the 9 netherworlds. However, the gourd was shriveled, shrinking to less than the size of a palm. It was accompanied by an underworld aura. At the same time, the wrinkled black gourd's entire body was seeping out blood. It was extremely terrifying. What does this mean? There is a fiendish demon sealed in that gourd. The deceased powerhouse is going to resurrect? Chu Feng asked. This was a serious problem. What he said last night was true. A heavenly vine, Tao giving birth to one, blossoming 3 flowers from then on, the 3 giving birth to all things. What was sealed in the 9 netherworlds gourd? However, what Dongqing was worried about wasn't this gourd, but rather the grave earth below it. That place is even more terrifying. If something comes out, the desolate border will no longer exist, turning into a land of death. Dongqing's face was wide and his nose thick. Right now, he was full of worry. That was why he contacted that young miss as soon as he returned yesterday. Chu Feng's mind was taut. He had just arrived in this territory, still wishing to leave after growing up a bit. Right now, he would fall into a fetal confusion from time to time. He actually encountered this type of thing. Chu Feng felt a sense of urgency. He really wanted to quickly become stronger. What about the smallest gourd? I didn't find it. I only brought back a withered vine. Dongqing produced a vine that was as thick as a water bucket from the spatial jade bottle. It wasn't a plant, but rather something formed from minerals. Unfortunately, she only picked up a small piece that was less than a meter long. The rest was burned clean. Dongqing explained, this thing is the essence of an earth vein, one of the main ingredients for refining the primordial small heavenly pill. She was extremely happy. This was the greatest harvest after entering the natural crater. After you guys entered the underworld stone gate, did you guys look through the withered gourd's grave earth? Who knows, there might be some supreme treasures buried with it. When Dongqing heard these words, a slap struck the back of his head. Why did you hit me? I'm helping you train. Dongqing's expression was unkind as she began to teach him a kind of fist technique. With just one move, Chu Feng felt amazed. This fist technique was very terrifying. In a moment, black mist appeared around Dongqing, and a chilly aura assaulted his face. It was clearly the time when the rosy clouds of dawn shone, but it was raining continuously nearby. Those were black raindrops, following which all the raindrops turned into little black fish that swam in the air. Chu Feng realized that this was a divine technique. It wasn't weaker than the lightning fist that young lady she taught him. Its origins were great. Every little fish turned into a symbol and swam in the vicinity. They emitted an extremely cold and gloomy aura that made one's soul resonate and tremble. "What kind of fist is this?" asked Chufeng. His eyes were burning with hope as he longed to learn it. What Dongqing demonstrated to him was only the form and hadn't displayed its spirit. If he didn't tell him, outsiders wouldn't be able to learn it. "You can call it the little fish fist." Dongqing secretly condensed her spiritual energy into a beam of light. She reflected the mnemonic chant in his heart and thoroughly transmitted it to him. "What a crappy name," mumbled Chufeng. He felt that it didn't have any imposing manner and couldn't feel the majestic and boundless fist intent. It didn't live up to the essence of this divine technique. Dongqing didn't care and said, "You can name it whatever you want. If you want, you can also call it the Overlord Fist, the Celestial Fist, whatever you want." How casual! Chufeng didn't bother about it and began to study this fist technique. Not long after, he began to punch. At first, the effect was average. It only had the form and not the spirit. Dongqing was too lazy to look and ran to the side to meditate. But not long after, she felt that something was wrong. Wisps of cold air arose, and then she saw scattered raindrops fall from Chufeng's side. They turned into black and indistinct little fish swimming about. Dongqing's heart was greatly shaken. This brat was too monstrous. He didn't seem to be much inferior to the young lady back then. His comprehension was also too terrifying. He could actually comprehend the true essence within just after accepting this fist technique. "I understand now. After the fist intent takes form, it's the yin fish of the Taiji diagram," Chufeng said to himself. At this time, he saw the shocked expression on Dongqing's face and felt a bit guilty. After all, this kind of performance might be too monstrous. He pretended to boast shamelessly and said, "Seeing such a rare genius like me, don't you think you should teach me the Divine Temple's highest inheritance scripture, that breathing technique?" Dongqing's expression darkened. Without saying anything further, she walked over, picked him up, and gave him a good beating. "You're a bit inferior to the young lady back then." After beating him, she didn't forget to give him a blow. "Black-hearted Dong," shouted Chufeng. "Practice fist techniques to avoid being beaten to death in the dragon's nest." Dongqing was incomparably serious. According to her, apart from the current noble descendants, there were also a few celestial venerable orthodoxies participating. They wanted to dispatch their monstrous descendants. Killing intent immediately arose in Chufeng's heart when he heard this. He had never thought that there would be orthodoxies of his great enemy among them. He rubbed his palms together, itching to immediately kill his way into the dragon's nest. "Why are there people from other evolutionary sects participating?" asked Chufeng. Dongqing said, "There's more than a nest of young dragons here. They're the large group of young dragons. The other experts that are relatively close to the desolate border received the news and requested to share the good fortune." Chufeng nodded. He calmed his heart and began to study the fist technique again. The more he comprehended, the more fascinated he became. He wanted to kill his way into the dragon's nest and get his revenge first. Only when the sun rose very high did Chufeng stop to rest. He drank a bowl of great nourishment, the true blood of the six-headed lion. Soon after, he ran to the Ji clan's tribe to visit the injured Jihu. Chapter 1041. He really did see them, not that far from each other, precisely in that forest. However, Chufeng knew that the two of them were separated by at least 20 years. He stood in front of a pond in the tribe, looking at his own tender face and pure eyes in the lake. His brows couldn't help but furrow slightly. Time is like water, the years like a song, but it flows in reverse. Now this little appearance, it really makes me feel pity. Chufeng sighed here, looking at his reflection in the lake, evaluating himself. Poochie. There were some who couldn't help but laugh in the back, the tribe's young ladies. Even though they still hadn't grown up, they were all over 175 centimeters tall. Their figures were tall and slender, their appearances pretty, all of them carrying a wild charm. I've never seen anyone praise themselves like this. A young lady giggled. I'm not praising myself, but rather chewing over the joys and sorrows of life, watching the flow of time, the world of mortals charming. How many beauties have aged? Only I have remained the same throughout the years. Chu Feng had his hands behind his back, putting on a disappointed and frustrated look. Ayo, I'm going to die from the sourness. You really are pretentious. The long-legged young ladies all laughed happily, covering their mouths as they laughed endlessly. Chu Feng gestured a bit, discovering that it wasn't even as high as their legs, making him feel more and more discontent. With a sigh, he said, "The furthest distance in this world is none other than when I am clearly standing between several pairs of snow-white and perfectly straight legs. Yet there are more than 10 years between us. It is as if I am walking alone outside the waning lights, difficult for me to turn back." Little pervert. The young ladies laughed in annoyance, putting on a show of wanting to deal with him. In the end, they rubbed Chu Feng's head and then left with smiles. I knew it would be like this. Someone as pure and intelligent as me. You all just rubbed my head before leaving. Can't we sit down and talk about how our youth soared? Little demon, do you want us to hug you? I'm scared that you'll pee on us. When Chu Feng heard their teasing, his old face became rare red. This matter completely became his dark history, impossible to wash away. Everyone liked to use this against him. At the same time, he also sighed from the bottom of his heart. This group of young and vigorous ladies were cheerful and happy. This type of tribe really was great, but there were changes in Heaven Pit. If Desolate Border became a land of death, these people would no longer exist. That would truly be sad and terrifying. Chu Feng took a deep breath, deciding that he was going to change this place before Desolate Border's great disaster descended. He couldn't bear to see the entire tribe be buried together with them. Jihu, Brother Hu, how are you? Are your injuries better? Chu Feng shouted as he entered the courtyard. The courtyard of Jihu's house was huge. There were many rooms in the stone house. He had 2 brothers and a sister, so there were quite a lot of people in the house. In the courtyard, there were some beast skins, ranging from the skin of a single-horned golden bear to the skin of a flying python. When a morning sun shone down, it was full of vitality and dazzling golden clouds. Fatty Dumpling and the other youths also came to visit Jihu. Hey, this kid actually brought a gift. This is the first time, Fatty Dumpling shouted. Who are you? How could I come to visit Brother, who empty-handed? In Chu Feng's hand was a fresh lotus leaf. It was unknown what was wrapped inside. Don't tell me you peed on Jihu's fur vest. Otherwise, why would you be so attentive? Someone teased. Go to the side. What's wrong with Brother Hu? Why is he so unhappy? Chu Feng asked. Jihu closed his mouth. Not a trace of a smile could be seen on his face. It's all because of those bastards from ThunderClan. They knocked out 6 or 7 of Jihu's teeth. All of his front teeth are gone. He finds it ugly and doesn't want to talk. Even though an elder promised to treat him with medicinal herbs and regrow his broken teeth, it would take at least 2 years to recover. Jihu was in the prime of his youth. Now that he had lost a few teeth, he was in a bad mood. Fatty Dumpling said in a low voice, "Why don't we go into the mountains and ask that person to treat him? He should be able to recover quickly." Shut up. Don't mention it again. Ji Feng berated. He was 2 years older than Fatty Dumpling and could be considered one of the pillars of the group. When the others heard that they were going into the mountains, their expressions changed and became very unnatural. Chu Feng was surprised. He suddenly felt that something was wrong. There was definitely something going on. He immediately asked, "Can it be solved by going into the mountains? What's there?" "Don't say it." Jihu said, "Are we still brothers? You can't even say this? Are you treating me like an outsider?" Chu Feng pretended to be unhappy. Jihu hesitated, but in the end, he still said it. In the old forest, there was a mountain struck by lightning. Every time it rained, strange things would happen. They went there to play and saw half of a stone coffin at the top of the mountain. Looking at the appearance of the coffin, it seemed to be from prehistoric times. Chu Feng's heart trembled when he heard the introduction. There was a voice in the coffin that had bewitched Jihu and the others, saying that it could teach them supreme techniques that could allow evolved people to be reborn after losing their bodies. The few youths were frightened and ran back to tell the elders. At that time, not only did Ji Haishin go, even Dong Qing went with him. In the end, the elders warned the group of children not to go and not to tell anyone. What kind of ghost? What technique does it want to teach you? Chu Feng asked. Xiaoyang fist, the fat boy said. When Chu Feng heard this, he was lost in thought. He had just learned the small fish fist, and now that he heard about the Xiaoyang fist, he suddenly had some ideas. Come, brother Hu, I brought you medicine. If your front teeth are broken, look for Sister Dongqing. There's no need to go far. As he spoke, Chu Feng opened the lotus leaf, revealing a black pill the size of a fist. It emitted the fragrance of chestnut flowers and milk. What is this? Mud? The fat boy asked doubtfully. Chu Feng said, This is a precious medicine that I personally refined. Brother Hu, quickly eat it while it's hot. I guarantee that your broken teeth will grow back soon. You know how to refine medicine? Who are you trying to fool? The group of youths curled their lips. Don't be ungrateful. There's an old guy who came to me just to eat this medicine. His cultivation level is a bit scary. In the end, after Chu Feng patted his chest and repeatedly promised, Ji Hu doubtfully ate a little bit of the black medicine. He couldn't take any more and felt his whole body burning. The effect was obvious. He felt his gums itch, and the effect was immediate. Chu Feng didn't leave. He chatted with them for a long time, learning more about the Thunderstruck Mountain. He was indeed a bit tempted. The so-called Xiaoyang fist made him somewhat suspicious. He pondered and decided to discuss with Dong Qing to see if he could open the coffin. Not far away, a familiar voice came from the tribe. Linoy's legs were slender and straight, and her steps were light as she walked on the stone-paved street. The two elders accompanied her, introducing something. After not seeing her for a long time, Linoy was still as beautiful as before. She was tall, her hair smooth, and her eyes beautiful. She had an otherworldly aura, and her temperament was as cold as before. The Divine King Level Fire Silkworm spat out a dress woven from natural silk flowed with a hazy halo, interweaving symbols and patterns. It made her figure even more slender and beautiful. On her head, the sparkling birdbeak bone hairpin looked especially attractive. It was bright red and sparkling, and divine chains hung down, binding a few strands of her hair. Overall, although she had a cold temperament, her clothing added a graceful and luxurious aura to her. This was a deliberate change. There was a man beside her. His robes were as white as snow, without a speck of dust. He was very elegant and calm, and his face was handsome. He was a rare beauty. He was very easygoing, holding a child's hand and holding a little girl. They were all young geniuses of the tribe. They looked to be a few years old, and were usually clever and obedient. The man was cultured and refined, and it was obvious that he had a good upbringing. Although they were in a savage tribe, he didn't have a superior attitude and was very gentle and down-to-earth. However, no one dared to look down on him because of this. Faintly discernible, a restrained calm and noble aura seeped out. He walked together with Linoy, and it was obvious that these two weren't ordinary people. They were descendants of the heavens, and there was a formless background. There were a few people following behind them. Their noble auras were restrained, and they didn't seem imposing at all. They weren't ordinary people. This child is a bit different. Linoy saw Chu Feng and walked over. Where are you going, little child? Come here. A tribe elder shouted. Chu Feng really didn't want to go over. Right now, he wasn't even as tall as her long legs. How could he endure this kind of reunion? However, the tribe elder had already spoken. If he ran away, then it would seem strange. He squeezed out a faint smile and walked over. Call her aunt. This is an honored guest. The tribe elder's face was full of enthusiasm. He knew that these people's origins were great, and he had to treat them well. Aunt? Chu Feng immediately wanted to spit at this old man's face. Wasn't this just screwing him over? He was very conflicted. Aunt? He wouldn't call her that even if he was beaten to death. In the end, he braced himself and shouted, Sister. Chu Feng remembered clearly that he was older than Linoy by more than half a year. What was this? It was all that old man's fault. He cursed in his heart. It was too embarrassing to face his ex-girlfriend like this. Good boy. Linoy smiled and patted his head. She was like a snow lotus on an iceberg, fresh and bright. However, the word good boy made Chu Feng look up to the sky and sigh. No one else had this kind of experience. Today was really strange. It was also because he raised his head that Linoy saw his little face more clearly. She was stunned for a moment and then squatted down to carry him. He didn't object to being carried, but after seeing the difference in height, he wanted to bang his head against the wall. Chu Feng felt that he shouldn't have run around without checking the almanac today. This young and tender face is a little similar to an old friend of mine, Linoy said, looking carefully at Chu Feng. Chu Feng was shocked. He had already become so small, but she could still see the similar features. He really wanted to say that it was just a face to begin with. Okay? Linoy was stunned. The more she looked, the more similar it seemed. Chu Feng was not used to being carried by his ex-girlfriend like a child. But after his face became thicker, his heart naturally calmed down. He opened his mouth and said, "Many people have said that I'm a heavenly genius and extraordinarily handsome. I'm a little like the prince on a black horse in their dreams from their past lives. This shameless child, I'll beat you up." The two elders couldn't stand it anymore. This was a distinguished guest, a descendant of the heavens. How could this little brat speak so carelessly? Linoy stopped the two elders and smiled. It was like snow on a flowering tree, pure and holy. She pinched Chu Feng's little face and said, "Real skin." In this situation, Chu Feng was really defeated. What could he say? The worst-case scenario that he had guessed earlier had happened. Being pinched by the other party and being carried like a child, he silently looked up at the sky. Chapter 1042. Ji Haishan walked over on the stone path. He was 3 meters tall, and his arms were thicker than a normal person's thighs. His entire person was like an iron tower. He happened to see Chu Feng talking smugly and blabbering even more than that royal guest. That little mouth of his never stopped talking, and his face immediately darkened. Shameless. You don't learn the good things and only know how to brag. Ji Haishan pulled a long face and walked over to give Chu Feng a slap. The barbarian men were quite rough, and his large hand was almost as long as half of Chu Feng's body. Although it was a light slap, it still made him lean forward, and his whole body was buried in Linoy's body. Chu Feng wanted to curse at that moment. This was too improper. After reincarnating, he was slapped every now and then. He was the great demon Chu, so his mood was terrible. But he didn't seem to be feeling that bad now. The first thing he felt was that he was buried in something soft and fragrant. When he opened his eyes, he saw that it was snow white and exquisite, sparkling and warm like suet jade. What was this? In an instant, Chu Feng understood. Linoy was wearing a long dress made of fire silk. Had he accidentally offended her? He murmured. He didn't have this kind of treatment in his previous life, and he actually encountered a face wash after reincarnation. Of course, this kind of shameless murmur could only be kept in his heart. If he dared to say it out loud, he reckoned that there would be quite a few people present who wanted to beat him to death. "Brat, why are you so well-behaved? Get up!" Ji Haishan shouted. He lifted Chu Feng by the neck and shook him there. "Haishan, don't be so careless when you hit him. He's still a child. Did you knock him unconscious?" An elder hurriedly stopped him. "He fainted," Chu Feng said while lying there in a daze. "Hey, this brat is looking for a beating." Ji Haishan rolled up his sleeves and was about to hit him again. Chu Feng raised his head reluctantly and said, "You are my godfather. Whatever you say goes. Come on, let's continue the same way." Hearing the news, Fatty Dumpling, Ji Hu, and the other youths were all shocked and tongue-tied. What was wrong with this kid today? He was usually very clever and never suffered any losses. He didn't want to be beaten, but now he was begging to be beaten? Little brat, you're really outrageous. Ji Haishan raised his arm, wanting to slap him again. At the same time, Linoy picked him up and moved away from her. If he was beaten this time, Chu Feng would not be able to lean forward anymore. Just like that, before Ji Haishin's slap even landed, Chu Feng began to cry out in a heart-wrenching manner. "Save me! Stop hitting me! Elders, ninth grandpa, hurry up and stop him. I'm about to die from the pain." Ji Hu, Fatty Dumpling, and the others were dumbfounded. But soon, Ji Hu was smart enough to understand Chu Feng. He rolled his eyes and sighed inwardly at Chu Feng's shamelessness. Slap! Ji Haishin's slap almost made Chu Feng jump up. It was so painful, it was a solid slap on his buttocks. Linoy did not bat an eyelid. She put him on the ground and pinched his ears, saying, "You're really naughty." But then, she said to Ji Haishin and the two elders, "I think this kid is not simple. I really want to take him as my disciple." Hearing this, Chu Feng wanted to shake his head so hard that it would break. He absolutely could not agree. Ji Haishin was in a difficult position, saying, "He already has a master. I think it will be very difficult for him to go elsewhere." The two elders were extremely enthusiastic and attentive. They pulled Chu Feng's hand and took a step forward, saying, "Even if we can't become master and disciple, it's fine to call her aunt. To be able to meet like this is fate. Quickly call her aunt." The two elders were really too enthusiastic. They could not wait to pull Chu Feng and call her aunt on his behalf. Chu Feng's forehead was almost dripping with sweat. He could not call her aunt even if he was beaten to death. "Calling her aunt makes me look old. It's better to call her sister," he quickly responded. It was at this time that the distant temporary imperial residence flickered with light. That was the activation of a large-scale transmission domain that could transport people from the boundlessly distant and resplendent divine nation of the primordial world. Someone had appeared. That was a middle-aged woman with a halo behind her head. It made her look incomparably sacred, as if she could suppress the entire desolate border. In a split second, the heavens and the earth became quiet. The beasts in the mountains all trembled and wanted to kneel down. Fortunately, she had retracted a wisp of her suppressive might in the blink of an eye. But all the creatures were still frozen in place for a moment. Swoosh! Linoy rapidly disappeared from the tribe and appeared at the temporary imperial residence. Chu Feng drew in a breath of cold air. This middle-aged woman, why did she look a bit like a celestial venerable? Even if she wasn't, she should be a quasi-celestial venerable. Apparently, Linoy had a very close relationship with that woman. The middle-aged woman pulled her hand and sized her up with a smile. In the tribe, the white-robed man who had been standing shoulder to shoulder with Linoy gently put down the child in his arms. He politely greeted the people of the Ji clan and also walked toward the temporary imperial residence. The others followed him. "White-robed senior brother, I still haven't asked for your names," Chu Feng shouted from behind. The elegant and handsome white-robed man was slightly surprised when he heard this. He smiled and said, "I'm Yi Jiping." When Chu Feng heard this name, he staggered and almost fell to the ground. Someone had just forced him to call her aunt, and in the end, Yi Jiping appeared. Swoosh! With a flash of white light, Yi Jiping and the others disappeared from this place and appeared in the temporary imperial residence in the forest. "Kid, why are you so excited? Why are you trembling all over?" An elder was shocked. He squatted down and quickly grabbed one of Chu Feng's little arms. "What are you looking for?" "I'm looking for a kitchen knife to chop that guy." Everyone was speechless. What was wrong with this kid? Why was he trembling for a kitchen knife to chop people? "Don't mess around. Young master, he has no enmity with you. Why are you so excited?" An elder pressed him down. "What's his surname?" "Isn't he called Yi Jiping? Then he can still be saved." Chu Feng calmed down. "Little brat, you're the only one who can mess around. You're asking for a beating, aren't you?" Ji Haishin glared at him. He was quite rough and wanted to smack his butt again. Chu Feng ran to the short mountain in a flash and stood in front of the temple. He just happened to see Dong Qing grinning at him. Chu Feng knew that this was a mockery. "Sister Dong Qing, you're too unkind. You're really a little mischievous. You're so young, yet you want to be jealous of someone. Dongqing said in a low, muffled voice. It's nothing. I was just shocked by that name. Besides, how can he compete with me? In another 10 years. At this point, Chu Feng was conflicted. He was filled with anger. He really didn't have much time. Another 10 years. In another 2 years, his child will be able to run all over the mountains and plains. Dongqing said with a big grin. Chu Feng had a look of grief and indignation. He looked up to the sky and said, How heart-wrenching. Sister Dongqing, I want to break off all ties with you. In the distance, light continued to flicker. Then, everyone disappeared without a trace. They all went to the dragon's nest? Why are they in such a hurry? Chu Feng was astonished. Dongqing said, It involves the Empyrean level. Those who should have come are more or less here. Some of the ancestors of some orthodoxies have already rushed over. Naturally, there's no time to waste. Chu Feng was stunned. He found it hard to believe. It involved the appearance of an Empyrean-level figure. How is this possible? That's a large dragon's nest. There might be a sleeping sky dragon at the very bottom. Dongqing's expression was solemn. Furthermore, she told Chu Feng that she would also set off in the next 2 days. Don't, Sister Dongqing. If you leave, I won't be able to stay in this tribe. Who will protect me? Chu Feng lacked confidence. Now, he unexpectedly walked together with the Divine Temple's fairies. He understood that they were extremely powerful. During his weakest childhood, they were naturally the best protectors. I'll be leaving for a few months at most. It's not like I won't come back at all. Dongqing was astonished. No one can say what will happen in the depths of the desolate border. Moreover, you'll be gone for a few months. What if some blind and powerful vicious beast comes and flattens this tribe with a single claw? What if I, who was originally going to become the most powerful man in history, die young? Chu Feng was indeed a bit uneasy. The destruction of the barbarian tribe. This type of situation was not a random occurrence. There were many extremely terrifying vicious beasts residing in the depths of the mountain range. If they truly went crazy, anything could happen. There had been tragedies in recent years. He then said, Moreover, I can see that the nearby tribes aren't on good terms with each other. Some tribes are extremely restless. What if someone comes looking for trouble and comes over to chop me up? Dongqing glared at him and said, What kind of atrocious things have you done? Why do you make others hate you so much that they want to come over and chop you up? I didn't do anything. Isn't this preparing for a rainy day? Chu Feng laughed dryly and said, Moreover, some good-for-nothings from the Thunder Tribe have indeed provoked me. I rewarded them with a patch of light rain. The spring rain is as precious as oil. Dongqing wanted to bring it over and beat him up, but in the end, he restrained himself and tossed him a jade tablet. It was dark and had a small fish symbol carved on it. It was much heavier than the previous one. This belongs to the young miss. Don't lose it, Dongqing warned. Got it. Chu Feng immediately found a beast tendon and tied it around his neck. He hung it on his chest and hid it. Additionally, Sister Dongqing, help me find some books on domains. I want to study them. There are a few books in the tribe that I've already completely understood. I feel that they're very simple, and I want to study them further. Chu Feng said as he made this request. Dongqing was truly a bit surprised. How difficult were domains? It was even more difficult than the path of evolution. Some people said it was 10 times more difficult, yet this brat actually had talent on the path of domains. No wonder the young miss guessed that you might be a failure on the path of reincarnation. You've lost your previous life's memories, but you've inherited some of your talents. To hell with a failure. Chu Feng cursed silently. There was no reincarnator who could toss things around more than him. It was completely against the law to force his way through. The Divine Temple Fairy had investigated Chu Feng's soul light, but he had hidden his main consciousness within the gray mist millstone and successfully avoided it. He had concealed the truth of the heavenly mystery. But you failed in the end. No matter what the reason is, you can only be a Tao protector, a guardian of the mountain, Dongqing muttered to herself. Chu Feng didn't pay attention to this fellow. He didn't want to be a professional bodyguard. He still wanted to rise up and wasn't interested in serving a little master. Afterwards, Dongqing said, I can help you find books on domains. What other requests do you have? Of course, I want all kinds of magnetic stones. I want to study domains. Bring me a magnetic mountain. I'll definitely need it. Afterwards, he was picked up and given a good beating. A magnetic mountain? Why don't you let me bring you a magnetic sea? Dongqing ground his teeth. His sharp fangs looked eerily white like small daggers. I'm just exaggerating a bit. Help me find a pile, the more the better. Domains are the most extravagant study. I need to spend a vast amount of magnetic stones before I can graduate. In the end, Dongqing basically fulfilled all of his wishes. Piles upon piles of profound magnetic stones, as well as some divine magnetic stones, appeared here. This caused the magnetic field to become chaotic, and the entire mountain became unstable. At the same time, there are dozens of animal skin books, all of which were ancient books related to domains. Dongqing informed him and said, I've also left you quite a lot of the rare minerals used to cook you. It'll be enough for you to use for a couple of months. Chu Feng nodded. This time, he had made up his mind to separate these minerals and figure out the little heavenly pill formula. Sister Dongqing, there's one more thing. There's a thunderstruck mountain not far away. There's a stone coffin from the prehistoric era there. Can we raise the coffin there and make a fortune? He was somewhat lacking in confidence. Two beams of black light shot out from Dongqing's eyes and landed on his body. Do you know its origins? It involves the prehistoric era, yet you still dare to touch it? Chu Feng didn't care in the slightest and said, Why wouldn't I dare? In any case, it's sealed in the stone coffin. If it dares to cause trouble and bring chaos to the desolate border, I'll throw it into the sinkhole and bury it in the dark nether earth. Chapter 1043. Dongqing picked up Chu Feng, her eyes shooting out two beams of black light as she stared at him and said, Right now, I feel that there's a need to lock you in a prehistoric underground palace. In the days that I'm not around, I'll isolate you from the world. You're really too good at tormenting people to prevent you from poking a hole in this area. Don't, Qing. Sis, you can't be so cruel. Chu Feng cried out. Qing. When Dongqing heard this form of address, goosebumps appeared all over her body. She immediately opened her bloody mouth and revealed her ferocious appearance. You're asking for a beating. She bared her fangs and breathed out like thunder, almost beating up Chu Feng again. Even if we're going to lock him, we should target that old corpse. Don't you think so, sis Dongqing? Chu Feng was very careful, really afraid that the basin-sized fist would come crashing down. Then, he carefully persuaded Dongqing, saying that the inheritance within the stone coffin was not simple. You don't need to say that. You're still young, but you think quite a lot. That's right. Our bloodline is related to that bloodline in prehistoric times. Chu Feng was immediately shaken when he heard this. It had already risen to prehistoric times. This was truly evil and terrifying. He became even more spirited, and he took a roundabout way to persuade Dongqing to investigate. It's useless. The creature within the stone coffin has long since deteriorated, and most of the techniques learned have already been lost. Dongqing's expression was solemn. Deteriorated? Is it rotten? Chu Feng asked. Bang! Dongqing's cauldron-sized fist landed on his head, and the large bump swelled up at a visible speed. It's a change in the level of life, Dongqing said while glaring at him. The stone coffin's origins were strange, and there was an indescribable secret. Dongqing explained a few secrets. When the divine temple fairy first discovered it, she confirmed that the creature within the stone coffin was related to their bloodline in prehistoric times. However, during the investigation process, she discovered that they could no longer communicate in a friendly manner. Why? Chu Feng asked. Dongqing said, no matter how extraordinary it was in the past, it is no longer the creature of the past. It originates from the 9 underworlds, and it has revived and returned from the kingdom of the dead. In short, this creature used to be an extraordinary character, but now it had changed. It was no longer its past self, but rather Shun of the 9 underworlds. As the name suggested, the 9 underworlds originally referred to the earth god. This was the first time Chu Feng had heard of such a term. According to Dong Qing, it was quite tragic and terrifying. The so-called netherworld ghost was a type of living being that was 100 times more terrifying than malicious spirits and demons. It was a combination of viciousness, hatred, and ruthlessness, and it was extremely evil. This type of creature returned from the 9 hells. Once it appeared, all creatures within a range of 1,000,000 li would die, no path of survival left. It would suck all of their blood, leaving only their skin and bones behind. He should have been very powerful when he was alive, but he abandoned himself and sank into the 9 underworlds before his death. Now that he has returned, he is no longer his original self. According to what Dong Qing said, if one wanted to become a ghost of the 9 netherworlds, they had to at least be an Empyrean or an Almighty when they were alive. Otherwise, there was no chance at all. When Chu Feng heard this, his gaze turned gloomy. Even becoming a 9 underworld ghost was so terrifying. His background must be shocking. In other words, the creature in the sarcophagus was at least a heavenly venerable in the past. Now that he had small arms and legs, if he wanted to deal with this monster, wouldn't that be courting death? Miss is nostalgic and feels that it is related to our bloodline after all. She wants to give it a chance, so she temporarily left it behind. Chu Feng was astonished and a little puzzled. Why would she give that kind of savage creature a chance? She would kill everyone she saw. Leaving it alive would be a future trouble. There are others who can also cleanse themselves of their past glory and become human again. Hold it, Sister Dong Qing. Saying that they can cleanse themselves of their past glory isn't too appropriate. In the end, Dong Qing glared at Chu Feng, and he lost his temper in an instant. He only said in a low voice, "Leaving such a savage creature around is a disaster." Dong Qing said, "There are others who can cleanse themselves of their evil thoughts. Rumor has it that there is a powerhouse in the Yang realm who is a 9 underworld ghost. In the end, he transcended and became an overlord again." When Chu Feng heard this, he felt that the foundation of the most powerful evolvers in the Yang realm was somewhat terrifying. Reincarnators, 9 underworld ghosts, and so on were not simple creatures. 9 underworld ghosts came back from the country of the dead. They loved Netherine Qi the most and feared Yang Qi the most. Therefore, the divine temple fairy placed it on Thunderstrike Mountain and tempered it. She wanted to grind away its evil tendencies and hoped that it would return to true kindness, but the results were not good. There was one time when the lightning tribulation was too grand and destroyed all the domains set up near Thunderstrike Mountain. Afterward, it caused Ji Hu, Fatty Dumpling, and the others to approach unintentionally. The young lady has already lost her patience. She feels that she can't reform it and prevent it from causing trouble. She wants to kill it, but it's not easy. Chu Feng was quite shocked. The divine temple fairy was this powerful. When he voiced out his doubts, Dong Qing's eyes became deep. The young lady is naturally very powerful. You don't understand at all, and you won't understand. Chu Feng was speechless. How could he not know that the woman who was like the 9 heavens fairy was a reincarnator? It was impossible for her not to have great accomplishments. In history, this kind of creature would eventually achieve great achievements. At the same time, no matter how powerful a 9 underworld ghost was when it was alive, everything would be ruined after death. After returning from the 9 underworld, its strength would be determined by its achievements after its resurrection. It has nothing to do with when it was alive, so all connections would be severed. Oh, so you're saying that the creature in the stone coffin isn't that powerful, and we can dig it out? Chu Feng became spirited again. Dong Qing said coldly, "How weak can a 9 underworld ghost that can absorb the blood of millions of Li be?" What he meant by starting over was only compared to when he was alive. The young lady didn't open the coffin to kill it, because she was worried that there were other peculiarities and she couldn't kill it completely. Chu Feng estimated for a moment and felt anxious. It really wasn't easy to provoke this creature. Dong Qing said again, "Although this 9 underworld ghost isn't very powerful, it was sealed in the stone coffin when it appeared. It's somewhat abnormal." Chu Feng said, Leaving it alive will always be a disaster. It should be dealt with in time. Dong Qing said, as long as we don't get within 3 meters of it, nothing will happen. The young lady left 6 heavenly talisman papers on the stone coffin. She then added, when the young lady returns, if it's still stubborn, we'll throw it into the celestial venerable cemetery in outer space and get rid of the future trouble forever. There's such a place? What's the situation over there? Chu Feng was very astonished. Don't say too much about matters of this level. Otherwise, it'll be a disaster. You'll naturally know when your strength is sufficient, Dong Qing warned. Isn't it just a graveyard? What's the big deal? Chu Feng curled his lips. Dong Qing's expression was grave as she said, you don't understand. An ancient grave is a resplendent palace hall, its fiery light reaching the heavens and burning the eternal star realms. Be more specific. Chu Feng guided. Bang! After suffering another blow, he immediately became well-behaved. All right, I'm preparing to leave. I'll go see if the young lady has any instructions. Do you have any other requests? I'm warning you, don't go touch that stone coffin. Chu Feng thought and said, then bring me to the bottom of the sinkhole to take a look. I want to go take a look at that Nethergord. In the end, he was almost fixed again. This kind of request was really too much in Dong Qing's opinion. It was practically courting death. Dong Qing left. She was rather decisive and did not even look back. Chu Feng had a misconception. Was she tried her best to get rid of him and not willing to take care of a milk baby like him every day? She left just like that? Chu Feng looked at her anxiously and was sure that she would not return in a short period of time. However, he still waited for a long time, fearing that Dong Qing would return, only until he was finally sure that Dong Qing had really left. He observed the surroundings again and did not hesitate to use the fiery eyes that did not have a golden beam of light to detect any movements. In the end, he took out the stone jar and filled it with all kinds of profound magnets and divine magnets. Before long, Chu Feng plunged into the underbrush and decisively entered the stone box. What's the situation? Chu Feng sucked in a cold breath. After carefully studying the stone jar, he discovered that the profound magnets of the Yang realm were almost on par with the divine magnets of the serene realm, and the divine magnets were close to the magnetic pith of the serene realm. This made him wild with joy and incomparably excited. No wonder Dong Qing said that she had already done her best when she found so many magnetic stones for him. These were all true heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Next, he used Divine King level methods to inscribe all kinds of complicated runes and brand them inside the magnetic stones. He worked meticulously, choosing half of the materials to be profound magnets and the other half divine magnets. He only came out after a long time. He was greatly startled because thunder rumbled outside, and it was a little frightening. Only when he stood in front of the divine temple did the sound of thunder gradually disperse. What was the situation? Chu Feng was somewhat uneasy because he felt the aura of a heavenly tribulation. He quickly rushed into the tribe and asked Ji, who, Fatty Dumpling, and the others. He shuddered with fear. Not long ago, lightning had descended from the clear sky and interweaved above the short mountain. It was extremely frightening. Oh no, I can't easily use Divine King level strength even if I hide in the stone box in the future. Otherwise, I'll be struck by lightning. It has its eyes on me. Chu Feng's heart was heavy. There was an indescribable law in the unseen world that was like a snow-white divine sword hanging high above his head. It could fall down at any time and behead him. I have to become stronger. I can't be threatened by it. Chu Feng strolled around the tribe and quietly buried some magnetic stones in uninhabited places. Afterwards, he returned to the short mountain and gazed into the mountain range. There, he could see a bare mountain not too far away. That was the Lightning Strike Mountain. As soon as Dong Qing left, he wanted to meet that Nether Ghost. If Dong Qing knew about this, he would definitely turn around and beat him half to death. Chu Feng fiddled with the magnetic stones and constructed a small transmission domain. The positioning was extremely precise, and his target was that lightning strike mountain. Swoosh! The next moment, he disappeared from this place and appeared on top of a bare mountain. There was a large distance between him and the peak. This was done intentionally. He was very interested in prehistoric celestial venerables and even powerful beings, even if they had already become 9 nether ghosts. Not too far away, he saw a stone coffin lying on top of the mountain. Hey, brother, we're on the same side. I'm the prehistoric great universe level evolver, ancient dust ship. I once sank into the 9 nether, but I've already struggled free and begun a new life. Chu Feng shouted toward the mountain. Unfortunately, it was useless no matter how he put on airs with his hands behind his back. He wasn't even a year old and didn't have any aura at all. However, the scene was somewhat sinister. After all, he was a child. His sudden appearance was naturally odd. I've come to enlighten you. Are you willing to follow me? Chu Feng shouted once again. Naturally, he didn't hope to trick this thing into becoming lame. This kind of being was both sinister and ruthless. It was the embodiment of the world's evil. He was only testing it. This place was extremely strange. The lightning strike mountain was bare, and a fair and clean little child had his hands behind his back. He claimed to be a senior of the 9 nether ghosts, and had come here to recruit followers. Chapter 1044. A gust of chilly wind blew past, and lifted up the coat that Ji who had given him. Chu Feng immediately felt a chill down below. His little face turned green. What was going on? Didn't they say that it would be fine as long as he was 3 meters away? He was at least 300 meters away. He remained silent for a moment and pretended to be calm. He pondered, it should be the mountain wind that brought along the chilly aura emitted by the stone coffin. The surroundings were silent and the atmosphere was oppressive. It was somewhat terrifying. Chu Feng coughed and said, I am Gu Qinzhou. Even though I'm a cosmic level evolver, I accidentally fell into the 9 underworlds and was lost. Now that I've transcended, I've come to rescue you. Just when he felt that the atmosphere was too cold and depressing, the stone coffin on the bare mountain peak suddenly shook violently. Chu Feng was shocked out of his wits, causing the entire mountain to tremble. A voice came from the coffin. Big brother, is it really you? I've waited for you for countless years. You've finally come. I'm Chenhai, Gu Chenhai. An old voice came from the coffin, full of excitement and vicissitudes of life. It banged against the stone coffin, wanting nothing more than to rush out. Chu Feng was dumbfounded. He was truly in a state of confusion. What was going on? Was he really going to recognize him? Then, he came to a realization and cursed in his heart. Gu Chanhai, you mother of asterisk cur. This 9 underworld spirit actually tricked your grandpa Chu. He called himself Chu Qinzhou, but it had to be a fake name. He made it up at random, but this 9 underworld spirit followed his lead and really called him Big Brother. Not only did it want to follow him, but it also wanted to shamelessly pretend to be his relative. It was too vile. He'd encountered a scoundrel who actually wanted to trick him, as expected of a 9 underworld spirit. Chu Feng sighed. Dong Qing was right. This kind of creature was the most sinister, cunning, and ruthless. It seemed that this kind of creature was also very shameless. While Chu Feng was in a daze, the 9 underworld spirit in the stone coffin spoke again. Big brother, is it really you? I fell into the 9 underworlds not for eternity, not to transform into the heavens, and not for the ultimate path. I only wanted to follow your footsteps in the land of the dead and wait for you to reappear. Big brother, I've missed you for eternity. It sobbed as if hot tears were rolling down its cheeks. Even the stone coffin trembled slightly as it wailed inside. Chu Feng really wanted to rush over and give him 2 good kicks. This guy was too engrossed in it. Did he really think he was so easy to trick? Big bro, although you've transcended, you should have already forgotten about the prehistoric era. You've forgotten about your glorious years. Those are your glorious years. Big brother, the 9 netherworld spirit in the 9 Chen said, you may not believe that we brothers have reunited, but take a step forward and look carefully. Stare at this rocky area on the mountain. There are some names written there. and the biggest word is goo. You might not believe that we brothers have reunited, but walk forward and look carefully. His attainments in this area are too profound, so he walked out confidently. There was a domain in this area. It was a restriction laid down by the fairy of the divine temple, but it couldn't stop him. Everyone had their own specialties, and relatively speaking, his attainments in this field were too profound. He walked out confidently. Some lost people came here by mistake. In order to guide them, I asked someone to carve this ancient character for me. This is my brother's surname, and I want to remember it. Some lost people came here by mistake. In order to guide them, I asked someone to carve this ancient character for me. This is my brother's surname, and I want to remember it. Chu Feng cried out inwardly. There really was an authentic ancient character carved on it. Could it be that he had really met a cheap little brother today and could take him in for his own use? But since he was a 9 netherworld spirit, shouldn't he sever everything from his life? At this moment, a voice came out from the stone coffin once more. It was choked with sobs as it said, "Big brother, do you see this stone coffin? This is something that I did everything I could to refine when I was alive. Why did I bring it with me into the 9 underworlds? Everything was because I was afraid of forgetting you. I left all kinds of imprints in the coffin, recording bits and pieces of what happened in the past. It was all so that I could still think of you. I wish to reunite with you in the 9 netherworlds and fight again as brothers." Chu Feng was flabbergasted. Could this even work? Big brother, have you really forgotten? Do you remember when you rode on the star realm and split the sky with your halberd? Heroes bowed their heads wherever your weapon pointed. Back then, you led us to conquer 1/10 of the Yang realm. This kind of achievement shocked the ancients and dazzled the contemporaries. Few people could occupy such a vast and boundless territory. In that resplendent era, you subdued the hibernating giants. At the same time, you even dared to declare war on the Forbidden Land. Your hot blood and passion burned the 33 heavens. For the sake of your followers, you exhaled like thunder in a moment of rage, blasting down the proud sons of the heavens and changing the world. You collected breathing techniques from all over the world. After reaching the peak, you still wanted to sublimate. You dared to despise time, sever all karma, and look down on the great Yang realm. Of course, you also had your flaws. After conquering the immortal evolutionary sex, you were iron-blooded and ruthless. You viewed the ancestors of the sex as weeds. You took in the evolvers of the other party as your servants. Even the maids you chose were heavenly fairies. Chu Feng was speechless. He didn't think it was a flaw. No matter how he looked at it, he was a winner in life. Maybe his requirements for character weren't that high? Nonsense. In the end, you flew into a rage for beauty and decided to charge into the great Yang realm. But you died before you could succeed. An unforeseen event happened, causing the hero to shed tears. The heavens took pity on you. Big brother, let me meet you again in this life. A loud cry came from the coffin. It was extremely sorrowful, like the sobs of ghosts in the autumn wind. Sorrow filled the mountains. Chu Feng pondered. Was this really a 9 underworlds with a story? If he mistook him for Big Brother, he might be able to continue pretending and ask for the prehistoric ultimate technique. When he thought of this possibility, his heart burned. But the next moment, he almost gave himself a slap. It was fine if he just thought about it, but did he really almost take it seriously? Chu Feng felt that the other party was very despicable. He was trying to fool him. After he calmed down, he wouldn't believe this nonsense, even if he was beaten to death. He pulled a long face and said, "Your big brother, I, have cut off the past and forgotten everything. Tell me a breathing technique or battle technique, preferably one that I loved or studied when I was alive. Let's see if it can evoke the memories in my subconscious." There was no sound from the coffin at once, as if it had been choked. After a long time, the old voice sounded again. "I'm afraid that it's not a human being. Are you really my big brother?" "Of course, I'm your prehistoric big brother. You must trust your intuition," Chu Feng said. The 9 underworlds said, "Then, big brother, send a strand of your divine sense into the coffin. Let me feel your aura and see if it's real. This was unbearable. Chu Feng's face darkened. He was furious. Was this damned old man looking down on him? Did he really think he was so easy to fool that he would court death in such a way? Cut the crap. Give me the ultimate technique, and I'll give you your freedom appropriately, Chu Feng said. Big brother, what do you mean? An old and surprised voice came from the coffin. Big my ass. The names on this mountain were written by the people you killed before they died, weren't they? Coincidentally, there's someone with the surname Gu who wrote a big ancient character. How dare you trick me? Chu Feng flew into a rage out of humiliation. He then added, also, you speak the common language with a barbarian accent. You must have learned it from the victims, right? You should at least be more professional and shout a few words of prehistoric language. Do you really think I'm a child? A horrifying laughter came from the coffin. It was completely different from before. It was as if a malevolent ghost was standing behind him and laughing coldly. It sent a chill down Chu Feng's spine. This kind of laughter was cold and filled with resentment, as expected of the 9 underworlds. Once it turned hostile and revealed a bit of its original temperament, it made people feel uncomfortable and apprehensive. Chu Feng said again, moreover, evolvers at the great universe level are all monsters. They're indescribable, so how could they have female confidence? How could they be in the mood to control 1/10 of the primordial land? This was also a test. He wanted to understand the evolvers of the great cosmos. That's because you're ignorant and inexperienced. This was the reply from the coffin. Other than that, the laughter became colder and colder as it spoke again. I've misjudged. How can one who walks by the river not get their shoes wet? I mistook you for a precocious child, but it turns out that I've met a ghost with a background. Your roots are not simple. After a slight pause, the 9 underworlds said, it's fine if you want the ultimate prehistoric breathing technique, but it's an equivalent exchange. You're not a simple ghost. Prepare 1,000,000 evolvers for me as a blood sacrifice. Chu Feng retorted, equivalent exchange my ass. Bring out the most powerful prehistoric breathing technique first, or else don't blame me for taking care of you. You want to trick me with nothing? You're still inexperienced. No, you're old. Try to intimidate and threaten me? Who do you think you are? The 9 underworlds laughed sinisterly with a hint of disdain. Chu Feng's little face tensed up. He nodded and said, be more serious. This is robbery and extortion. Bring out the most powerful breathing technique. The 9 underworlds was choked quite badly. At the same time, he was choking with anger. He really wanted to kill someone. This was the first time in history that someone had actually extorted him. He wanted the breathing technique and was still acting so righteously. At the same time, he felt his liver ache. This little bastard was really indulging in fantasy. Keep dreaming, Chu Feng said again. I'm warning you. If you don't hand over the breathing technique, I'll throw you into the sinkhole and bury you in the underworld. Brother, you're not particular when it comes to doing things, the 9 underworlds said coldly, causing Chu Feng to feel waves of cold. At the same time, Chu Feng also felt that it was a bit odd. This sinister monster's tone was becoming increasingly indifferent. Was he fearless of the sinkhole, or was he just pretending to be calm? Who cares? Chu Feng felt that he should put some of his plans into action first. He didn't approach the sarcophagus because he felt that Dong Qing's words weren't reliable. The so-called danger within 3 meters wasn't quite right. He began to throw out piece after piece of translucent magnetic stones from a distance of over 60 meters and rapidly set up a transportation domain. Buzz. The next moment, the sarcophagus trembled and entered the densely packed domain ruins. Little demon, what do you want? The 9 underworlds cried out. I'll send you to the sinkhole and the underworld, Chu Feng said coldly. With a buzz, the sarcophagus disappeared. Afterwards, Chu Feng quickly changed the arrangement of the magnetic stones. Of course, it was only a slight change. It was still a transportation domain, and he stepped into it. The next moment, Chu Feng appeared at the edge of the sinkhole. He was less than a kilometer away from the sarcophagus and was at the edge of the pitch-black pit. At this time, The commotion in the coffin was too great, and continuous explosions rang out. "Big brother, I know I was wrong. Let me out. It seems you really know me through and through." Little brother Gu Chunhai is convinced. The aged voice was heard howling. What the hell was this Gu Chunhai? Chu Feng wouldn't believe this was his name, even if he was beaten to death. "It seems you're very afraid of this place," said Chu Feng. "I struggled for a long time and suffered for many years before crawling out of this place. Big brother Gu Chinzhou, please let me live." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.